Live stream audio test. 1, 2, 3, 4.
She's going to just say, make a statement.
A very short, I'm not going to...
How about that? Good evening, colleagues. It's the witching hour. I would like to start the meeting. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to this face-to-face meeting of the Council. There is an option for councillors to join online. For those members and officers who do join online, the members will be unable to take part in a vote, but they can take part in the discussion. We're streaming today's meeting live on the internet, and a recorded version will be available to view within 48 hours on North Somerset Council website. Do we have anybody joining us online? No? Thank you. Councillor Ashton was hoping to.
Yeah, I think it's slightly late, but it's not. Doesn't go online.
So thank you. We have a number of speakers in public participation. In fact, we've got 8 of them. If I'd like to remind our public speakers that you have 5 minutes to present your speech. I will actually time you and tell you when you've got a minute left, and if at a minute to go you've got another 2 pages of your speech to say, could you please go to the last paragraph, because I will stop you after 5 minutes, because it's important that all 8 of you have a chance to speak and that everybody can listen to everything that everyone says. So if I'd like to invite David Flossman first, please.
I would like to thank the Council for this opportunity to speak, and I'll begin. I'm part of a recently formed group called the Western-super-Mare Friends of Palestine. We were encouraged by the statement that Councillors Bell and Gibbons released on the 16th of October in their respective capacities of Leader of the Council and Deputy Leader of the Council. The statement read as follows. North Somerset Council is a diverse community made up of people with different backgrounds, faiths and life experiences. We are united in condemning all acts of terror wherever they occur. The attacks on civilians have appalled us, and our thoughts are with those affected, including those living here in North Somerset. We stand ready to help and support all those in our community who are impacted by these events and are deeply concerned about the ensuing humanitarian crisis. We call for peace and an end to the needless suffering and deaths of innocent men, women and children in Israel and Palestine. Councillor Mike Bell, Leader of the Council, Councillor Catherine Gibbons, Deputy Leader of the Council. For the first public event that the Western-super-Mare Friends of Palestine put on, we started a petition calling for a ceasefire. And for every signatory of the ceasefire, we gave them a yellow ribbon, similar to the one that I'm wearing on my left lapel now. The yellow ribbon is an old English symbol that denotes the promise of either safe return or reconciliation. And this device was used by the families and friends of captured Israelis in their campaign to persuade their government to negotiate the release of their captured relatives. Also in the launch event, we made reference to 2 quotes made by David Cameron, now Lord Cameron, when he was then Prime Minister in July 2010, and reported by the BBC on the 27th of July 2010. The first quote is, "Gaza cannot and must not be allowed to remain a prison camp. The second quote is, "People in Gaza are living under constant attacks and pressure in an open-air prison." The yellow ribbon also represented the fact that the Palestinians were not free and living in a prison. On the 17th of December 2023, the Sunday Times carried an article jointly penned by Lord Cameron and Annalena Baerbock, the German Foreign Minister, in which they called for a sustainable ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza conflict, and where Lord Cameron warned that too many civilians have been killed. At the time of his speaking, the civilian death toll had reached 18,000. And in the article, he went on further. He said, our goal cannot simply be an end to the fighting today. It must be peace lasting for days, years, and generations. In the following week...
I'm sorry, David, you've got a minute left.
I've got a minute left, okay. Right. I will reference This is an extract from the BJGP, which is the Journal of the British Journal of General Practitioners, and it contains two pleas. One is a plea to protect healthcare workers and healthcare professionals, and what we have seen in Gaza is a failure to protect healthcare, destruction of healthcare centres and attacks on hospitals. It goes on further to say that only a complete ceasefire that allows aid to come into Gaza with an international commitment to rebuilding its basic infrastructure can prevent further public health catastrophes. I'm also going to refer to the UN Council...
That's your time up.
Okay, well, thank you for listening, councillors.
Closing sentence?
Be a good friend.
Sorry.
A good friend always pulls their friend out of a fight that turns nasty. So please vote for the resolution later on this evening calling for a ceasefire.
Thank you. How do I turn that off? I'm sorry, my IT skills are pretty rubbish. Thank you, David. Could I call Gareth Hiscock now, please? How should I have turned it off? I don't know. We'll try again. I haven't started it yet. Yeah.
Madam Chairman, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I want to start a debate on the council tax arrangements for the domestic properties of the deceased residents of North Somerset. I'm sure that the right-minded people here would agree that the role of the council is to ensure what needs to be done gets done, and what gets done better over time. Policies of the council should be ethical, fair, and make common sense to people. I regret the policy in respect of council tax on deceased residents' properties falls short of this criteria, in my opinion. Following the death of a sole occupant, 6 months' grace is given on council tax at 100% after grant of probate. Why 6 months? Why is the council tax 100%? If people live alone, they get a reduction. 0 people, should there be a reduction? What about ability to pay? A deceased person has no income. Effectively, council tax goes up upon death. What is the rationale behind this? I propose that the matter should be reviewed by the council or its executive or someone. And in this regard, I propose emailing Councillor Bell, who I believe is in charge of revenues, and I would detail my observations on the matter, and if he could have the courtesy to respond to me or one of his people. Really, all I'm after is confirmation it's been reviewed, because I've looked into it for obvious reasons, as you can probably guess, and if a person murders someone and they go to prison, they pay 0 council tax. If the person they murdered, their property is then paying 100% council tax, so they're paying more. It seems perverse. Okay, it's probably something that's never really been looked at. So all I'm asking is, can it be reviewed? And then somebody come back to me and say, yeah, we looked at it, we think it's fine as it is. Fair enough. That's a matter of opinion. That's all I ask. Or if you think it should change, you know, you're putting the wheels in motion. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And do send your email as you're going to. Amanda Barrett, please. The one on the left. It should come on red. On the left.
Hi, is it okay? Yep. Okay, thanks for letting me speak. I'm speaking about the EPIC planning application, which I hope most of you have heard about. It's going to cause potentially the biggest impact to Long Ashton and South Bristol since the Second World War. The documents are hundreds. There are literally thousands of words from EPIC's consultants, so I just want to put some residents' views towards you. So EPIC wants its Middle Eastern and European headquarters here in the UK. It intends to hold monthly training sessions, bringing in clients from a variety of countries to learn how to use its medical software. It has to be based in Britain because EPIC assumes that otherwise there would be a language barrier between this headquarters and its American base. It could be argued that many Europeans and people from the Middle East speak impeccable English, better perhaps than some of us. They also mention beneficial tax and employment laws, so I'd love to unpick those. EPIC has decided the Southwest is the place to be, partly because of the charming people, so count yourselves lucky, and the beautiful landscape. Only 26 sites have been scrutinised, all of which are focused on and around Bristol. Criteria are exceedingly strict. A site on Bedminster Down was dismissed because the surrounding area had low quality housing and a higher than average crime rate. Both are debatable claims, but you can see EPIC does not want to compromise. Their chosen site is a high quality greenbelt in Long Ashton, and as shown at every election, it's land valued highly by residents of North Somerset. EPIC's consultants and legal advisors have done their best to put forward a set of very special circumstances to ensure that potential benefits will outweigh the harm caused to our greenbelt. People are not convinced. Almost 95% of comments online are objections for support for retention of the greenbelt and concerns voiced about climate change and biodiversity loss. This position is reinforced by advice from several committees appointed by government that state maintaining and enhancing the greenbelt will strengthen our climate resilience and reduce biodiversity loss. We're lucky to have the greenbelt. It's an incomparable necklace of land embracing the cities of mainland Britain that allows access to potentially high-quality green and blue space by some of the most socially deprived people in the land. To their credit, the democratically elected North Somerset councillors have recognised the need to retain the greenbelt wherever it can, and long may this continue. But we now have the situation where a large American corporation, bolstered by extreme wealth and a huge sense of self-worth, is throwing its colossal weight behind a proposal that it admits will cause harm to the green belt. And as the objections online show, will cause extreme distress to many of us. Epic consistently say they want to replicate their US headquarters here in Britain. So it's worth pointing out that they're still consistently building their headquarters in America, expanding, increasing building height. So once you have Epic, you don't lose them. A leopard doesn't change its spots, so the same will happen here. Granting Epic's planning application could create a tsunami of planning applications that will swallow up this corner of North Somerset. Epic's HQ will dominate the South Bristol Gateway, with Ashton Court, the suspension bridge...
I'm sorry, Amanda, you've got a minute left.
Okay. And the heights of George and Clifton acting as a dramatic backdrop for their headquarters, a mini-kingdom surrounded by carefully curated green space to ensure that its staff maintain their creative productivity. Refusing Epic's planning application may stop this tsunami dead in its tracks. Why would house builders get permission to develop here if Epic has been refused? On the other hand, if Epic succeeds in building its corporate HQ on this parcel of high-quality greenbelt, it will create a national precedent in case law. This will send a very bad signal to the rest of the country and give impetus to more developments in the wrong places. We all hope North Somerset can neatly sidestep such a dubious legacy. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you.
Thanks.
You're next, Tom Leindorfer.
Thank you for letting me address you. It's good to be back in the chamber. You have several items on your agenda which are close to my heart, biodiversity and corporate parenting, but I've come here to add my voice and urge you to support the motion which calls for the immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the immediate release of hostages, to allow the free flow of humanitarian aid, and to allow the possibility of an end to the conflict and a peaceful solution. Now, none of us have any illusions that a motion passed in this chamber will achieve what UN General Assembly vote or UN Security Council motions have so far not been able to achieve. However, I'd like to put it to you that doing nothing increases a general feeling of helplessness, indeed possibly even a loss of faith in humanity. There are people in North Somerset who may be directly affected by having friends, relatives, colleagues in the area, or people who may have experienced an increase in hate speech, whether it's anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. And certainly I know that there are many parents who worried about the effect on young people of seeing indiscriminate violence on children. Now, as some of you know, I was a Holocaust survivor as a young child, with close relatives killed in Auschwitz, in forced labor unit, or shot into the Danube. So as you can imagine, the horrors of the murderous attacks on the 7th of October had a deep horror and revulsion effect on me. And every day since then, we are reminded of the unimaginable pain that's been caused as for a child whose mother was murdered on that day and father taken hostage. But for the last 3 months, we have seen thousands of children killed and maimed, and thousands more who have lost their lives or lost their parents. A population 9 times that of the whole of North Somerset has been displaced. Their communities destroyed, their homes destroyed. Dependent now for basic food, shelter, rudimentary medical help on whatever aid can still get through. The UN agencies are warning of the dangers of starvation. There's a collapsing medical care. People from the UK who have gone there, doctors to help, had to be withdrawn because there are no safe places for them to operate. UN agencies are warning of a humanitarian catastrophe of immense proportions. Israeli agencies who have worked with Palestinians for years have been writing to President Biden asking him to intervene and to have
Sorry, Tom, you've got a minute left.
On their government. So supporting the motion is partly a symbolic act to show that as representatives of North Somerset residents, you stand with those who want the killing to stop and with those who want the hostages released. You are asking our government and our politicians to do what they know in their hearts is right, and to stop the killing and start the hard process of finding solutions for a lasting peace. I urge you to put aside any hesitations and to support the motion unanimously.
Thank you, Tom. Could I ask Harvey Lilly to come up? Coming.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to talk. I too would like to talk about the EPIC planning application, but I want to report back specifically to the Council and to the planning officers and the planning committee on the packed public meeting held in Long Ashton Village Hall on Saturday about the EPIC Systems planning application to build their European and Middle East HQ on high-value greenbelt land in between Long Ashton and North Bristol. People listened to both sides of the arguments, but overall, perhaps 90% of those there were opposed. Residents are at pains to stress they aren't against EPIC, just against their arrogance of wanting to dump an obsolete American corporate model onto North Somerset without any compromise. EPIC acknowledge their plans will cause considerable harm to the Greenbelt, so base their case on very special circumstances, whose benefits, they argue, will outweigh the harm. This they fail to do. They base their arguments on 5 criteria. I may only get to 3 or 4 of them, but here goes. 1, need. EPIC argue they need a UK version of their Wisconsin HQ. This sprawls across 1,100 acres. It's twice the size of Monaco. They want a 90-acre version for Long Ashton, where each individual worker has a separate office with facilities that keep them working on site. Their work culture doesn't take into account new progressive hybrid working that isn't reliant on an astonishingly low-density campus model in a country and a county where green space with all its benefits is a premium. I was particularly struck by the comments from the CEO of a data systems company and an individual who's worked in data since the 1970s. Both effectively challenged the EPIC campus model, revealing it's shunned by other US data systems companies. 2, openness. It was noted that Historic England have raised serious concerns of a significant negative impact. It was also noted that approval would set a dangerous precedent. Also, their claims the development won't have significant visual impact were frankly rubbished. Their auditorium is 32 metres high, almost as high as Ashton Gate Stadium. It'll be the 13th biggest auditorium in the UK, bang in the centre of the last remaining green space between Bristol and Long Ashton. Number 3, alternative sites. Even though many of the sites they dismissed are brownfield and would greatly enhance urban regeneration, they argued none of them fitted in 100% to their campus model. Some compromise there. Members of the public suggested a Lloyd's building, Filton, or indeed Weston to help North Somerset with its stated employment needs. Professor Colin Fudge has alerted them to the second phase of the University of Bristol development at Temple Meads, which is 100,000 square metres and is next to the business faculty and the IT research centre. Come on. According to Professor Fudge, EPIC admit they haven't even bothered to consider this site. And I'm running out of time. Socioeconomic benefits. It was pointed out that whereas the harm that will be done is real, the so-called socioeconomic benefits have multiple ifs attached to them. Yes, there will be ground rent and S106, but these inducements don't add up to a lasting social economic benefits for the local communities. EPIC even attacked North Somerset's employment growth policy, saying you've got it wrong, that employment growth should be focused on the South Bristol fringe. None of this is in the local plan, and they're not allowed to bully you into making up policy on the hoof, are they? And few of the 2,000 jobs they claim, certainly not the high-quality ones,
Sorry, Harvey, you've got a minute there.
will come from North Somerset. They've already admitted to Liam Fox that there will be few new jobs in the short and medium term. I could talk about sustainable benefits, but I'll go to my conclusion. They couldn't do sustainable benefits either. In conclusion, the meeting recognised that none of these spurious so-called benefits outweigh the significant harm caused to the Greenbelt, to the people of Long Ashton and of North Somerset by this arrogant, inappropriate and misjudged plan. I've no need to remind planning officers the application doesn't meet any of the requirements for building on the Greenbelt set out in both the NPPF and the local plan, where the area isn't even assigned for development. An EPIC special pleading for very special circumstances should be dismissed. It doesn't add up. I urge North Somerset Council to fulfil its obligation to the local plan and the community and reject the EPIC proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Daniel Adams to come up, please?
Good evening, councillors. I would like to talk this evening regarding the ongoing saga of the Cleveland Business Improvement District, which was balloted in July 2023 in favour of Cleveland bid continuing for another 5 years. As you may be aware, the businesses of Cleveland appealed the ballot result to the Secretary of State, who recently made a ruling in the appeal that went against the businesses purely on the basis that the test of Regulation 9 was not met, which was an unobtainably high legislative test to overcome. Regardless of the appeal outcome, serious questions remain as to the circumstances by which the ballot was won in favour of the Cleveland bid continuing. It is an undisputable fact that North Somerset Council had an undue influence on the ballot result, which one North Somerset Council member stated having stated that North Somerset Council would have a disproportionate impact on the ballot. North Somerset Council submitted votes totalling £1.1 million at the ballot. The ludicrousy of that is that 54% of the yes votes cast at the ballot were from North Somerset Council properties, including free-to-use car parks that don't even charge for use, a children's community centre that doesn't even know what Clevedon Bid is, the town library, and the Castlewood Council offices. The Castlewood Council offices only voted yes on condition that Clevedon Bid give them a 90% discount on levy contributions from this site, and North Somerset Council expects everyone else, including charity shops and doctor surgeries, to pay in full. I read a small statement from the Clevedon Bid administrator himself that kind of encapsulates this perfectly. I mentioned North Somerset Council's vote concerning Castlewood, which is the largest RV voter in the bid, representing approximately 25% of the whole. North Somerset Council's vote is essential, as the next two largest voters are discounters B&M and Lidl, who we expect to vote no. And to context that, B&M pay £8,000 a year into the bid, £40,000 over a 5-year period. Lidl pay £4,600 a year into Clevedon Bid, nearly £20,000 over a 5-year period, and get absolutely zero value for that investment, hence why they vote no. 5 years ago, North Somerset Council gave us advance notice of their voting intention on condition of a cap of £2,500 levy per annum, and they're supposed to pay £20,000 from that site. This represented a discount of nearly 90%, which I considered inappropriate, however acquiesced, as otherwise there would be no Clevedon Bid. The Clevedon Bid administrator himself admits that without the Castlewood vote, there would be no Clevedon Bid. The businesses had a democratic right to vote no to the continuation of the Clevedon Bid, and they did so. It was only the North Somerset Council took that away from them by using £1.1 million worth of votes, including the Castlewood vote, for the ballot to go in favour of Clevedon Bid. My question and request is that Clevedon Bid, that North Somerset Council review what happened before the ballot, during the ballot, and after the ballot. The businesses officially requested that the council abstain from voting, as they had done in Minehead, and leave it to the businesses to decide. The council completely ignored this request. We didn't even get a response. Post-ballot, it was requested that the council veto the bid proposal, given that the legislation had been broken in two specific ways in regards to the Castlewood inclusion, which represented a geographical manipulation of the bid area, and an inequitable financial burden by giving Castlewood a 90% discount, which was not extended to anybody else. That veto request was acknowledged, but the council sat on it until the 14-day period ran out, and then simply said, we're out of time, we can't use our veto. The council also sent me a letter.
Sorry, Daniel, you've got a minute left.
No problem. Council also sent me a letter on the 1st of August admitting the use of their votes, and stated that without the use of their votes, there would have been no Clevedon Bid and the proposal would have failed. It's simply outrageous that the council could have colluded with the bid in this way to get the ballot result through against the wishes of the businesses, and I hope this can be looked at and a commitment made that this levy will not be enforced on any business in Clevedon that does not wish to pay it, given the circumstances by which this ballot result was won. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Kathy Lydiard? Kathy?
Hi, I'm here also to talk about the situation in Gaza and why it is relevant for us all to take action. In 1967, Israel occupied the Palestinian territories of West Bank and Gaza. In 2005, although it officially withdrew from Gaza, it has since led a blockade of the area, meaning, as you heard earlier, that Gaza is described as an open-air prison. Within the West Bank, there's been continuous illegal Israeli settlements and increases in settler violence towards Palestinians. In 2022, a Human Rights Council inquiry concluded that this continued occupation and discrimination against Palestinians are key causes of recurrent instability and conflict in the region. This instability flared horrendously on 7th of October, as we all know, with Hamas killing Israeli soldiers, civilians, and taking 200 hostages. The total killed that day was around 1,200, and Israeli military have recently conceded that an immense quantity of hits were from their own friendly fire. Since then, Israeli forces have killed a further 23,000 Palestinians, most of whom are women and children, and right this second, there are countless more under the rubble. Gaza is a similar size to North Somerset. Israel has bombed and bulldozed north of Gaza to the ground now, equivalent to from Nailsea to Pill being demolished. The healthcare system in Gaza is collapsing, and Israel has created conditions for an imminent famine. Almost 2 million people have been forced out of their homes and told to go into the safe area in South Gaza. So imagine almost 2 million people now turning up between Weston and Bleeden, with no food, water, sewage systems or healthcare. One of those is Tibi, a humanitarian aid worker who says that her children scream all day from hunger. Over a month ago, YouGov Eurotrack poll showed that 59% of British people think Israel should stop military action and call for a ceasefire. But neither our ruling party or the main opposition reflect this view. This week, South Africa, supported by many other countries, is bringing a case against Israel under the Genocide Convention in the International Court of Justice. I wrote to my MP and asked him if the UK should support this case. He responded, "It is not a matter for the UK." This astounded me, as the UK has signed up to the Genocide Convention, meaning that it is our legal responsibility to prevent genocide. We must also take responsibility, as it was our British Lord Balfour in 1917 who gave the go-ahead for the establishment, in his words, within Palestine, for a national home for the Jewish people, under the condition that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of the existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. We have clearly failed on that commitment. From pulling the British Army out in 1948, allowing the displacement of 700,000 Palestinians, to today where we are vetoing ceasefires or abstaining in the UN, whilst our Bristol factories make the bombs that strike the Palestinians. This is very much a matter for us. So feeling politically isolated and unrepresented on this matter, I find myself here and asking you to represent and act on mine and my neighbours' behalfs. And on the matter of hostages, of course they should be released, those that Hamas hold and also the thousands of Palestinians that Israel hold. In September last year, before October 7th, there were 1,310 Palestinians imprisoned by Israel without charge or trial. This included 146 children. It is too late for the 23,000 Palestinians that have been killed in the last 3 months and for those under the rubble now. But for those still living, including the 10 children every day since October the 7th that have had one or both legs amputated and will need a lifetime of medical treatment, including the 1,000 children that since October the 7th have had limbs amputated without anaesthetic in Gaza and that will live with the trauma forever, we must act. I'll leave you with the words of Dr. Mahmoud Abu Najala, who worked with Doctors Without Borders and was killed by an Israeli airstrike last month. Before he is killed, he wrote on the hospital board, "Whoever stays until the end will tell the story. We did what we could. Remember us. I want us to do more than just remember the dead and tell their stories. I want us to say that we all did what we could. So please take whatever action you can as a council to end this cycle of violence." Thank you.
Now we have Amanda Barrett coming back, and Amanda is going to read. It's had it again. Sorry, Amanda, just carry on walking, ignore my phone.
Members, there was another speaker who had registered who is unfortunately not being able to attend with us tonight. So she has asked Amanda to read out the speech that she would otherwise have done. So the speech is actually that of Jenny Hindman, but Amanda is going to deliver it for her.
Thank you.
I think I'm speaking. I just need to gather myself actually after the last speech. I'm really sorry. I wish I'd gone before. Anyway, I am speaking. Oh, sorry.
It is possible for one of the officers to read the speech if you would prefer.
No, because I need to précis it. I'll just gather myself. I'm speaking as a trustee of the Long Ashton Nature, Community and Environment Trust, a charity whose overall remit is to maintain and enhance biodiversity within Long Ashton and beyond. The Trust engages with young people through work in schools and local clubs, and we know from extensive research done in this country and Europe that children of primary school age are particularly worried about climate change and loss of wildlife. Specifically, when you drill down to it, that adults are not doing enough to address these problems. With that in mind, the Trust has read and responded to the Biodiversity Supplementary Planning document produced by North Somerset Council in November 2023. We also draw on October 2023 report from the Office for Environmental Protection and the State of Nature report released late in September 2023 that shows the ongoing devastating decline of British wildlife. We congratulate North Somerset Council on tackling some of the key issues within its Biodiversity Supplementary Planning document, but understand that with the support of national government, much more could be achieved. For instance, the government in its 25-year environment plan announced it would embed the principle of environmental net gain in the planning system. Unfortunately, subsequent government inaction and policy documents have only focused on biodiversity net gain. So going back to the EPIC application, EPIC draws attention to its biodiversity net gain policy, but we need to put this into an effective framework, and in a nutshell, the Office for Environmental Protection says this policy doesn't do enough to stem the ongoing loss of habitats and species. The accelerating rise in temperature, unpredictable weather, floods and heat waves experienced in 2023 is predicted to get even worse in 2024, with millions of people worldwide losing their homes and livelihoods. Britain will not escape the impacts of this, and as we all know, a lot of conflict arises from the loss of food, supplies and safe homes. To deal with the adverse impacts of climate change, we know ecosystems must be resilient, and the safest guarding of this is environmental net gain. The safest mechanism for reducing the biodiversity impact of infrastructure is to avoid the impacts to biodiversity initially. In practice, this means redirecting development to previously degraded sites wherever possible. So why doesn't EPIC take this statement seriously? Why doesn't EPIC recognise that the world has changed and is changing radically since it first built its US campus in 2005? Why does EPIC have to hang on to an outdated business model and build a campus more suited to the imperial dominance of the Victorian era or the 1980s than the 21st century? Where is their corporate social governance policy? Where are the green roofs and living walls? Why haven't their consultants insisted on adopting a record-breaking environmental net gain policy? Why not embrace building on brownfield sites, on sites identified by North Somerset Council as ideal for urban regeneration? Why not put their heart and soul into helping North Somerset Council realise its own ambitions rather than bullying them into accepting theirs? Bearing all this in mind, we hope that North Somerset Council reviews its EPIC's application and recognises the importance of protecting the remaining portions of Greenbelt land in the hope of maintaining and enhancing it to provide a safer future for our children and the wildlife with which we share our planet. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers. I know it's quite an ordeal coming up here and facing all of us, so thank you for that. Apologies for absence.
Chairperson, the only advance apology I've received is from Councillor Crockford Hawley.
You've got another one?
Yep, Nigel Ashton and Peter Bryant, please.
Oh, for goodness sakes. I am so sorry about my phone. It's now, the timer is now off. But I would be tempted to time other things. Thank you, Lisa. Declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests? None. We now come to the minutes of the last meeting. Councillor Bell?
Yes, move approval, Chair.
Do you have a seconder? Catherine? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Let's carry on. So we haven't got... could I ask Councillor Annemieke Waite to make a comment?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. This is in relation to the motion that was put forward at the last meeting to do with the Environment Agency and the work that people felt was not happening as fast as we would like. Just in response to that, to say that we wrote to the Environment Agency in December with a long list of questions which was specific to the areas identified, and we've asked them for a full update on all those issues. And given the list of questions, we're not really expecting an answer very quickly, but we have asked for an answer by the end of January, and we will feed back at the next full council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, what would you like?
Thank you, Chairman. Pity we didn't get the full report. I know I'm involved with the drainage boards and we've been after this information for a very long time from the Environment Agency. It's just as a thought, I don't know whether the letter from the executive member actually caused it, but I hear Emma Barker has resigned with immediate effect as Regional Director of the Environment Agency. Reading further down the notes, I find she has become a director for Wessex Water and thought the conflict of interest would be too great. So we didn't have the luck we thought we had.
I apologise for the last full council meeting. My husband and I were at the mercy of a very, very stretched National Health Service. Fortunately, all is on the mend. But if you see me looking at my phone, it's because I'm just checking comments of what is may or may not be happening in the hospital. So I excuse my phone. Hopefully nothing urgent or serious will appear. Thank you to Peter, wherever he is, for chairing the last meeting. And I'm sure you were all as focused and as efficient as you are with me, with Peter. Finally, a welcome. I think we have a new district councillor amongst us. So would Thomas Daw like to stand up and give us a smile? You weren't expecting that, were you? Thank you. I hope you enjoy your role as district councillor and meetings like this. So item 6, Councillor Bell, you're going to introduce this item.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is hopefully the report on MetroWest and the recommendations to delegate, slightly awkwardly, to delegate authority to me to approve the submission of the full business case and progress any further amendments to the scheme required. We expect, as the report sets out, to submit the full business case next month with a view to securing approvals from the Department for Transport by May. This will enable Network Rail to progress the scheme and will bring back a further report in the summer for Council to finalise funding agreements to enable construction to start in August this year, all being well. Members will know that the Council, together with the West of England Combined Authority, agreed further funding in 2022 to help meet the cost pressures on this scheme. As the recommendations make clear, we have played our part with local resources, and we now expect the Department for Transport to take responsibility for any capital delivery risk or cost pressures going forward. By connecting 50,000 residents back into the rail network, the Portishead to Bristol line stands to be transformative for both North Somerset and the region. Not only will it provide better connections for Portishead and Pill, but it will offer green alternatives to getting around, cutting road traffic with expected train journeys of around 20 to 25 minutes. Submission of the full business case will be the culmination of years of hard work and effort, and I'd particularly like to acknowledge the work of our officers and especially James Wilcock. Our thanks to our partners at the West of England Combined Authority, including the Metro Mayor Dan Norris, and of course Network Rail for their role in helping us to prepare the full business case and in progressing the scheme. I also appreciate and want to recognise the commitment of many members over several years, including Councillors Nigel Ashton and Steve Bridger, and former Council Leader Don Davis, for their work and leadership in getting us to this position. I'd also like to say thank you to Sir Liam Fox for his unwavering support for this project, and we do look forward to that continuing as we land the final approvals and hopefully get the spades in the ground in the next few months. So look for a seconder and happy to take any questions or comments.
Do we have a seconder? Roger, seconder. Thank you. Do we have anybody who wants to debate this? I hope not. Did I hear a word? Roger?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that it's great to see the Portishead Railway Line project is finally nearing a conclusion. This new line will extend the UK's passenger network by 9 miles, connect an additional 50,000 people to the rail network, and improve the existing train service for 180,000 people within 1 kilometre of existing stations. The people of Portishead and Pill have been crying out for this railway link for as long as I can remember, almost since it was closed in the 1960s. I'm sure everyone here knows how much residential development has taken place in Portishead over the last 25 years, with little or no associated improvements in the road networks. So I hope you can all understand that the people of Portishead feel that they are owed this significant public transport upgrade. This has taken many years to come to fruition, and I hope we can all support its progression through to delivery.
Thank you, Roger. Peter?
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to say anything, but hearing Roger's euphoria over this one, I really do hope it happens. Bluntly, as a few of us have been around in Portishead for a very long time, Portishead Railway Station reopening has been 5 years in the future. From every regional assembly meeting I attended in the early 2000s, now, hopefully, we are there. But I'm sorry, like a lot of other people in Portishead, we have our fingers crossed and everything else we possibly can, and wish Mike Bell and the rest all the success in getting this one over the line. But pardon us for being cynical.
Thank you. Do you want to do a summing up, Mike? You'll be pleased to know it's unanimous. Item 7, Development Commissioning Plans and Updates. Councillor Caniford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking for support to revise the commissioning plans tonight for Weston-super-Mare town centres and the Castlewood sites. The Council adopted a development strategy in February 21 and set out the Council's need to provide homes for local need, to create better quality homes and to create sustainable developments and lead by example with our own land. We need to deliver sites that the open market simply won't participate or deliver, particularly brownfield sites, and in doing so generating funding to invest in council priorities and to help fix our ailing facilities and infrastructure. I'm going to reference some points in the report, so if you do have it there, it might be helpful. 3.2 shows what can be done in regards to parklands and uplands, and the delivery of 150 affordable homes through those 2 sites. And after the consultation, we have found support for development, particularly for the Western Centre sites and Castlewood, as well as Parklands Phase 2 and 3. 3.10, the sites identified, these have not been deemed to be a priority for the Council, and the Council will not pursue these, but with the understanding that if a third party puts a proposal forward to provide much needed affordable homes and housing, we will bring this back to Council for a decision. I also propose to remove the downside site in Portishead from the programme, and will open discussions with Portishead Town Council to create an open green space in the town centre. Let's be clear, the Weston-super-Mare sites have a negative value and will need further support to solve and resolve the issues of these sites moving forward. We do clearly need to get on with Castlewood and the town centre sites. The commissioning plan was approved in February 22 and again in January 23, but at this time it was considered best way forward would be for best price. But due to the economic environment, there has been little or no interest. What we are now proposing is to work with Aquarius, a Bath and North East Somerset development company, to move this whole project forward. 3.24 provides details of the delivery process, and if you wish to have a look at that, please do. 5.4 covers the funding. The initial works and design will be the first part, and this will be paid for through the development reserves, driving growth, and the capacity fund. Of course, we will be looking to recoup these funds through the sale of the land once done. 511 to 514 gives us the expected receipts for these sites. Some clearly have a great deal more value than others, but the whole process should fund the Council's priorities and the things that we choose to do and repair and fix. Of course, there is mitigation and there is risk, but we can pull out of this arrangement at any time if we're not happy with the process of design, the works or the proposals. So we are not tied in at any stage. Jenny Ford, our Assistant Director, is online to answer any technical questions that members may have. She's here. Oh, great. Hi. And on that, I'd like to thank her for the huge amount of work that's gone into this, because we have been pushing for these brownfield sites to be dealt with for some time. So I would ask you to support this report and its recommendations.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Steve, would you like to start? Steve Bridger.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, rightly, in my view, this council is not purely motivated by money. Otherwise, we'd be selling off the land we own to the highest bidder. But on land that we do own, the council, I think, we've shown we look to deliver above the policy, our policy requirement, to deliver housing of a specific sort of a mix specific to a particular area. And I think the last administration was particularly ambitious in this area. Just wanted to speak very briefly to recommendation 2. So I welcome the caveat in paragraph 3.10 that Councillor Caniford referred to, given the need for affordable housing and this council's track record in delivering what the market often doesn't. It's worth remembering, I think, that capital receipts do actually support other projects in the capital programme, like school extension projects and leisure centres and so forth. On paragraph 3.12, specifically the downside Slade Road site in Portishead. So this is a site I visited a number of times with local elected members, and I think once, Mark, we visited it together. So I'm aware of the issues. My slight concern here is that if the Portishead Town Council didn't actually bring forward a deliverable plan for enhanced community open space, which I stress I would fully support, If it didn't do that within a certain time frame, for example, the end of next year, 2025, with this wording, the council seemed to be closing off any scope to take this site forward for the development of affordable housing. It seems to be a bit open-ended. So, you know, fully support what Portishead Town Council and local residents there might want to do with the site, but this seems there's the potential for this to, I think, with this wording, for this to just sort of drag out for years and years. So it would be good. I'm not asking for amendment or anything, but I'd like to see, you know, some movement within a couple of years, so that you know, that patch of land can you know, be enhanced for the community as open space, open green space, as I think the community wants. But if that didn't happen, you know, we need affordable housing. Thank you.
Would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Caniford, for presenting the paper, and also to Jenny Ford for all your work, your team's hard work in getting us to this stage. I just want to express my support for this paper. It's really important. I think we were in this stage that we're focusing and prioritizing, so that as we talk about all the time, we get the spades in the ground as soon as possible with a really high quality green project. And I really think we've got a team together and a proposal that will do this. I note that for the Western Town Centre sites, we're aiming for over 50% affordable housing. We're going to try and use all the grants we can to aim for as much social housing in that as possible, and recognizing that, as we all know, secure and quality housing is the foundation of health. So I really look forward to helping this project take shape. I wanted to speak briefly on to paragraph 3.1, where we say the priorities of this, the objectives of our development strategy. The fourth point is to generate funding to deliver on other priorities. So just to recognize, and can it be noted that, you know, building this housing, affordable housing, social housing, we're contributing health, community, we're repairing the fabric of this very handsome neighborhood right in the middle of Weston. And that is social and economic value itself, and also a positive receipt. It's not just about the money that we get in, although those positive receipts will generate, you know, money to the council in improving our area. So I ask that these positive receipts, economic and social, can be clarified and locked into the decision-making process, so that we understand that value is a financial value as well. And lastly, just in relation to, you know, there's a bit of a contradiction, and while we do have a climate and biodiversity crisis, so how can we justify building? We know that the building industry is something like 40% of emissions. But actually, we're trying our best, and I see that we've taken a number of steps in the Parklands site and also the Uplands site to really push our ability to make very green housing. Here we have something called AECB Carbon Light Standard, and I looked this up because I hadn't heard of this before. It stands for the Association for Environment Conscious Building, and it's about using simple techniques and technologies to reduce operational carbon of a building by 70% compared to the average UK structure. So, you know, this is still a very ambitious green aim, and hopefully when we have the draft local plan, which is going through hopefully in 8 months' time, we'll have something that introduces a limit on the embodied carbon of new buildings. So I hope this is going to be a new chapter in quality green homes in our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Kieran Connolly, Councillor Kieran Connolly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm over here, little me. So I just wanted to say I'm pleased to see that the council has reviewed the position regarding homes on Hutton Moor, and will now be deprioritising this and not actively pursuing it. It's a tricky bit of land, I know you know that, and it would have had wider impacts around Hutton Moor. So it's going to be really welcome news to my residents, and I know it doesn't remove the risk entirely, it simply just reduces it. I do think it's the right decision at this time. So I wanted to thank you and thank all the officers for that work, because I know that's been a lot of work and a lot of engagement to get to that point.
Thank you, Kieran. Councillor Robert Payne. Robert?
Yeah, thank you very much. With regard to the Western Town Centre sites, it has been hugely frustrating for locals that these sites have continued to be unoccupied and been unoccupied for so long. I know that a lot of work has been going on behind the scenes with Councillor Canaford and Jenny Ford's team, but to residents who aren't privy to that, they just see year after year these sites remain as they are, unchanged. So finally we have a realistic way forward with the AQUIS plan, and that's great because I think the previous plan was never really going to deliver for these sites. We really need these sites to be developed, not just because they look terrible despite being in a high-profile, prominent location, but also because we want to use them to boost the town centre economy, and we desperately need affordable homes for families in Central Western. I am a bit disappointed by the time scale. We could be looking at another 2 years or more before we actually see the spades going into the ground. I'm also conscious that the Dolphin Square site in particular is located between two previous phases with highly aesthetically challenging architecture, the Premier Inn and the leisure complex. So for me, it is vital that we don't follow those mistakes and we stick to the aim of high quality design and with the urban green spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Caritas, Councillor Caritas Charles, where are you? Over there.
Hello, I just wanted to sort of thank those involved and to thank Mark and the team behind Mark for listening to the voices in Portishead that resoundingly over 3 times expressed their opinion with regards to the site there, and to give reassurance to Councillor Bridger that Portishead is not a town that just talks. Portishead is a town that does. And we will have that site, and it will be led by a town council chairman that in 2 years did what couldn't be done in 2 decades and built one of the greatest skate parks in this authority. So we have a very clear commitment to this site as a town. It will be amazing. Come and see it when it opens.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Nicola Holland. Nicola?
I just want to back up what Councillor Giles has just said and say thank you very much to Mark and to Steve for coming to see the site. I would like to say thank you to Jenny and her team for all your work on this report, and thank you for including us, and thank you for listening to the town. We really are, as Caritas just said, we really are ready. We are absolutely ready for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. I think Hannah Young, Councillor Hannah Young next.
I also wanted to support the approach, and thanks to Mark and to Jenny's team for all the hard work to put this together. I particularly wanted to welcome the plan for Castlewood. Speaking as a Clevedon councillor, this is, I know there's been a great deal of fear in Clevedon over the years about what could happen to Castlewood in the hands of various developers, where often you lose a great deal of control around what you then have within your town. And this solution is one that's not only fantastic in terms of potentially likely to result in a much higher quality of provision for Clevedon in terms of the build and the sustainability which Councillor Homaris has described, but also will go some much greater way to meet the very, very strong local need for affordable housing. And particularly, I think we're very grateful that it's not another older people's living accommodation that we're looking at with this plan. So I think it's a really positive result for Clevedon. The Castlewood site was the subject of a placemaking exercise last year, which was supported, it was generated by North Somerset Council and supported by the Town Council, where representatives from businesses and many different community organisations, including Clevedon Civic Society, came together to put their views around a number of sites, but particularly about Castlewood and about what should be achieved. And I was one of those people before I became a councillor who was part of that discussion. And I have to say it was a great, interesting, exciting generation of ideas which was taken through to the placemaking strategy. one of the things that I like about this approach, therefore, is that I think it gives the greatest possible chance that the views of local people will be listened to through the development process, and the council will have control over the plans that are brought forward. And I think that is a huge step forward for our communities, and it's most likely to achieve the sorts of solutions and housing and economic development in future that we want to see in these locations. So very briefly, I also welcome the recognition that there is a very strong drive for community-led housing in Clevedon, which is referenced in relation to Hangstone Quarry and also potentially in relation to the Churchill road site in future. The Community Land Trust is very active, and I know champing at the bit to get going in respect of local sites, and have been recently, I think, very positively engaged with the executive members who are responsible for this, and also with the officers. So thank you. It sounds a bit like the Oscars. I know a whole range of thank yous, but I do really fully support this paper and recognise it as a really big win, I think, for Clevedon. So I hope others will also support it.
Thank you, Hannah. We now have Annemieke.
Thank you. Many of you will know by now that I'm not from Weston. I live in Dundry, about as far away as you can get from Weston as you can get. But since I was elected in May, feels like a long time ago now, I've had the great pleasure of wandering around Weston and getting to know it much better than I did before. And I've really enjoyed that. But reading this development programme, for which I do want to add my congratulations, by the way, can that please be noted? But reading the document, it did make me think that if I were a resident in Weston, and given that Dolphin Square and the immediate area around here is so much the heart of Weston, I do wonder, Mark, whether there is a way, and Jenny, whether there is a way that we can have really close connections with the local community in Weston to see what it is they want to see built in their town centre. Because, you know, ultimately the town centre is where people should want to go and want to spend time and want to live and want to shop. So I think if there is an opportunity that we can have some involvement of the local community in you know, what it's going to look like when it's done, I think if I were a resident here, I think I would really welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Bell?
Thank you, and it follows on actually from Councillor Young's comments in the sense of I just want to recognise that this report is a really good example of how the council has listened. You know, we went through a process of engaging and listening to the community and listening to our partners in the town and parish councils on the development programme, and this report tangibly shows how we've changed outcomes as a result of that listening exercise. So I want to really recognise the great work that all colleagues have done to go out and think about some of these sites and the right way to progress them. Secondly, I just wanted to say you know, there's loads of good stuff in here, and it's not just site-specific. Let's not lose sight of the fact that our development programme has delivered 500 homes already underway, millions of pounds worth of capital benefit for the council, but more critically for us to invest in services and our infrastructure and our community facilities in the future. The plan still will deliver more homes, another 1,000 homes across North Somerset, and more money that we can again invest in the essential infrastructure that we need as a community. As a town centre councillor in Weston, can I also agree with Councillor Payne entirely that it is absolutely fantastic that we have again changed our approach when we've hit a barrier. You know, for years and years, the town centre sites were in private ownership and nothing happened. It was then in the hands of Homes England, a government agency, and nothing happened. So we acted and we acquired the sites back into council ownership in 2022, the right thing to do to try and change the dynamic. We now have a different approach. We've tried going out to the market and trying to find commercial developers and partners. That isn't working because of the economic conditions, so we're trying a different approach with Aquis, and I think that's the right thing to do. So again, really demonstrates that this is a council that is serious about encountering challenges, rolling up our sleeves and trying to solve them. My own, just to rein slightly on the congratulations, it's a great report and it's a great plan. Now we've got to deliver, and so Mark, Jenny and the team, delivery has to be our focus now, because unless we've actually delivered on these sites in the years to come, we will just get criticism from our residents, from our businesses and from members around the chamber. So let's get on with it.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor James Clayton now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Caniford and officers for the report that is before us. I would just like to make comments in relation to the Old Mixon Recreational Grounds. To many, it is known as the St John's site that is on the Bourneville estate. I'm sure Councillor Parker wouldn't mind me speaking on his behalf also in support for the site, but we must remember that it has to be the right development there for that site. And what I mean by the right development is that we have the right affordable housing for the residents of South Ward. Me and Councillor Parker get a number of cases each week where people are contacting us in relation to homeless situations or accommodation that is just not suitable for them anymore. So we need the right development there for the residents of South Ward, and also the right recreational facilities there for our children of South Ward and the residents. So myself and Councillor Parker will be having a very watchful eye over any development that is proposed for that area and working with the executive member on that. So again, thank you for this report, and I look forward to any developments.
Thank you. Now, Catherine Gibbons. Catherine.
Thank you. I just wanted to join the chorus of people thanking everyone involved in producing this report and the work that we hope will commence. I just wanted to also point out that I'm really pleased to see that there is a commitment to looking at making sure that we can provide homes that are adaptable and available for young people, particularly our care experienced people. In 3.48, I think it's commented on. And I think that's another example of how we have listened. And those of you who've attended any of the meetings where the corporate parenting panel speaks with our young people and care experienced people, the lack of homes for them in the places they want to live in Weston or in Clevedon is dire, and they are often trapped in unfortunate accommodation that they can't afford and can't access the sort of work they want because there's nothing for them. So I'm really pleased to see this, and I really hope that this will come to pass. So in the delivery mark, let's hope that we get that delivered as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Luke Smith. Luke?
Thank you, Chair. I thought I'd say that as the ward member for Hangstone Quarry, I think that's quite a promising brownfield site, but obviously the devil is in the detail and delivery. And I'm also quite glad, and a lot of my residents will be, that the land off of Churchill Avenue has been deprioritised, as there was a lot of, and against sentiment for that. But there is also widely a need for housing. However, I've still got a lot of very big concerns about the Castlewood site, and that I'll start from the top and I'll be as brief as I can, that there's no placemaking policy background because the only document there was never adopted, and to be fair, it was quite brief and lacking on detail. I think the costings are quite spurious, with a 6.5 million saving in 10 years. Then this report says, but to change it, may have to borrow 20 to 25 million pound. Then there's the £2 million that regenerates the town hall, and then there's also the potential £1 million up front. So I have a few concerns about how that one adds up. But the main concern is that the loss of services at the Castlewood site, its loss will achieve, as the job centre there I've seen no mention of it being retained in the plans, despite the reports saying they're happy to remain and would actively work with us. And the police and registration office should be retained and are key services to the community, which also raises the higher point that there'll be no council presence here in Clevedon or the north of the district whatsoever, with the want for a pure housing development even without large scale, or not large scale, even without small scale or mixed use for commercial assets, when in the reports all of our partners say, our commercial partners say, they would like to maintain small scale areas. Now, the accommodation strategy states that we should aim for a visible presence and points of touchdown for teams serving local communities. My big concern is that especially our mobile and field workers, such as our social workers and any other more personal services, they won't have a sensible or visible base, and my residents will be left with the thought that we've essentially been asset stripped to pay for 2 sites in Weston that don't make a capital receipt, and they've just been left in the lurch to an extent. I do sympathise that we do have to move forward, and a large-scale commercial use or old building is not ideal, but we should maintain a presence and we should maintain local services. And just having a quick look at the Appendix A at the end, I have a concern, these are technical points, about high-rise, which is supported, which government guidance says is 7+ stories. I would be very concerned if that came through as a proposal. And also, I'm concerned about parking, as the main access point is the motorway, and I do feel that this will be a dormitory development where a lot of younger families or families will move out from Bristol and primarily keep their jobs there. And with the lack of a train station and a limited bus, the car is the only key transport for this area. And same with the cycle routes, it seemed quite vague, and I think there is a lot of potential to add or remodel the footpath off of Daniel Close that links to Northern Way, which would in turn link that new estate to the other estates and eventually the Southern Ring Road and Middle Path. Thank you.
Thank you. David Shopland, did you have your hand up, David?
I always stand up because then I can make the door in time if I upset everybody. Madam Chairman, at the last minute, a proposal to build or provide facilities for a large industrial estate outside the Clevedon development on the east side adjoining Court Lane was inserted in the development plan. It's only just been brought to my notice. It was a last-minute effort. We are told the reason for it is because the council has to justify house building in relation to employment sites. What intrigues me greatly about this site is, briefly, there are 2 major industrial sites in Clevedon, or next door to it. One at Ken and Castlewood. No industry wants to take it, either of them, so there are suggestions that the Ken site and Castlewood be developed. Fair enough. That's an argument that is going to come up later on. But let's get back to Castlewood. I was on a committee in the last administration. We had a meeting, the ward councillors, to discuss the future of Castlewood. We made certain suggestions, but we were never called to hold another meeting. And one of those suggestions was maintaining, as has been said, the public facilities, the police, etc., on the site or a presence. Secondly, there should be some social housing. That is the greatest need, social housing, for those who cannot afford to rent. And also there were to be some public land set aside for public amenities, i.e. a youth club, a church, or something of that nature. There is nothing of that in this proposal. Therefore, I am personally loath to support it. Hangstone Quarry, I believe the Town Council has expressed an interest in that. If they haven't, they should have. They agreed to. That basically is it, Mr. Chairman, but I think Castlewood should be looked at again and the points that were brought up by the district councillors and the last administration addressed. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Michael Pryke.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just raise a couple of points, the first of which being a technical one with regards to paragraphs 3.26 and 3.29, which makes reference to potential loan funding for stage 3. In light of the report that we have received or will be receiving at the end of this meeting, could we just be updated about the kind of financial situation we might find ourselves in and how feasible it might be, considering the potential commitment to a large amount of short-term borrowing that these loans might end up the council putting us in? The second point I just wanted to make was with regards to keeping a presence of North Somerset Council within Clevedon. As has been raised by the two other Clevedon councillors that have spoken, this is of quite a grave concern to our residents, and I think it might be helpful if at some point a report was brought to the council outlining presuming that Castlewood has been sold, what that presence might look like. Finally, I will just muse in the irony of we are selling this Castlewood building, but yet it was Castlewood that kept Clevedon bid going.
Thank you. And lastly, Mike.
Yes, I'd like to add my voice and commend my colleague Mark Canifert, Jenny Ford and the team for the work they've done, and say that I'm totally on board. I'm again in agreement, and I will keep it brief, with Mike Bell and Robert Payne about the site, the Dolphin Square site. That really is a flagship site. It's on our seafront, and it really will need to be done sympathetically. So thank you very much, Mark, team, and everybody else involved.
Thank you. Over to you then, Mark.
Well, I'll be brief after that, and I think firstly I should say all the credit should go to Jenny and Jenny Ford and not me. Couple of things. Of course, I'll talk to Jenny about how we include social value in terms of the social element of housing, and that does have a cash value in the sense that it provides something that this council is very keen to provide. So, yeah, that's a good point. Councillor Payne, the changing environment has made it really difficult, hasn't it? You know that we have pushed and pushed to get something done here over the last 5 years, and in fairness, the previous administration sold off the land in the hope that they would get something moving on that. So it's not through the lack of trying, but we've had to stop, look again, and decide to move in a slightly different direction. I think what I can say, I'm meeting ward councillors from South Ward and Weston later this week with Jenny. I think for any of these sites, I think members need to be assured that we will make sure engagement goes on with you. So we're not going to be pushing, I'm not going to be agreeing with Jenny issues that have not gone back through the local members on any and all of these sites. So I want to thank also my exec colleagues and the scrutiny panels, the work they've done into this as well. I think a lot of things have been commented on, some of them relevant, some of them not, and many of them weren't questions, but I have heard what you have asked, what you have said. In terms of the loans, that decision, if there was a decision to be made, it would come back to council with a full business case. So it wouldn't just be agreed and borrowed money, so I can assure members of that. And Hankstone, the only interest that was shown on there was for community-led housing, none from the town council whatsoever. So I think it's important that we make sure we keep to the facts on this. And finally, I would like to just say to my colleagues in Portishead that I might even consider standing for election up there, because I signed off the skate park, and now I've signed off the downside, so maybe I'd be quite popular. Thank you. I look for your support anyway for this report.
Thank you. So I think we now go to the vote. All those in favour of the proposal, please put your hand up. Do you need to count? Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's clearly carried. Have you taken breath, Councillor Caniford?
Okay.
Over to you.
Right, off again. So, the biodiversity supplementary planning document, if I can refer to that as the SDP from this point on, that would be helpful. It's nearly 20 years since the previous update of this policy, and the policy needs updating to recognise current practices, today's policies, and new legislation. We have taken the opportunity this time to separate the biodiversity SDP and the tree SDP for greater clarity through the planning processes. The main themes are a 10% net gain in our biodiversity, and obviously, as I just said, separating the trees SDP from it, which will give us clear policies and processes for our planning officers. It will also give design guides and advice on ecological checklists to help applicants through the process. The benefits are very clear. It helps our nature to recover. It delivers the council's priorities, it enhances the sites, and it safeguards public access to nature. This also provides clarity to how we take into account of biodiversity net gain. We have asked officers to make sure the policy helps applicants to deliver what is required from the council and to provide solid policies to help our natural environment by adding a design guide and an ecological checklist to prevent double accounting. Biodiversity net gain is set in the Environmental Act 2021, which requires councils to seek 10% net gain. But this can be adapted by government at any time, and the new level will be adopted in this policy. So we will adhere to government legislation, and if it changes, we will obviously do this. The consultation has resulted in amendments, clarifications, corrections, and more signposting through the policy, such as the MENDIP AONB and the Nature Recovery Plan. It also included 2 engagement sessions, and it has gone through scrutiny. There have been voiced concerns about enforcement, which will of course be like any other planning condition through 106 conditions, and without the net gain will not be signed off, so the properties would not be able to go through for sale. I'm sure most of us will be in agreement with this. I don't think anyone could be not in agreement with it. It is updating our policy, pushing ahead with the net gain that we all want, and help developers to provide what we call for. Also, in what they do, protecting our natural habitat, and that is what I know pretty much every council I've ever spoken to would want to see. So please support these proposals, and let's get this on the books.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Nicola Holland. Do we have any questions, thoughts? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Very simple, hopefully, question, Councillor Caniford. Is this effective immediately, and are planning applications still being assessed, therefore impacted in terms of planning weight?
Yes, once council is adopted and I've signed, it will be immediately in effect.
Councillor Bridger, Steve?
Thank you. Yeah, again, very briefly, I very much support this document. So thank you, Mark. As as you said, we desperately needed to update this one. This was a very old SBD, and I think there's clearly very broad support among those resident groups as well who've got expertise in this area. But as you referenced, I think also a lot of scepticism, particularly on our ability, the council's ability to sort of oversee the discharge of planning conditions and any, follow through and any subsequent enforcement. We know we've got, it's a real challenge in that area, especially given the cost pressures. We do need to be robust as a council in dialogue with developers to ensure that they deliver. I think there was also a comment, and I think it's from one of my residents, about perhaps it could have been a little bit stronger in providing some model planning conditions. I think this resident is particularly thinking about getting developers to include a very small number of Swift bricks in buildings, but perhaps that, as this kind of rolls out, that's something that we can perhaps work on, but very much support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, my question is very, very similar to what Councillor Bridget just said, but it's really just to say that when I was reading the document, and particularly the comments that organisations and people had made, there's lots of reference there to enforcement, and I just was going to say that are we taking into account that actually this increases the level of enforcement that as a council we're going to have to do, and how are we going to handle that as we go forward? There are obviously budgetary issues that I'm thinking of. But apart from that, I think it's great, and thank you very much. I think it's a really good document and it'll really help us as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Back to you then, Mark.
Yes, so just quickly, the only question really is about enforcement, and I'll certainly take that with Jenny and the planning team to make sure that we have clear guidelines on how we check and enforce that, and make sure that in the policy is strong enough for us to move forward with that, because it is really important. I think even before this SDP, many of us have been talking about developers creating an environment that not just our nature wants to live in, but our residents want to live with nature. So indeed, those points, I think, hopefully, Steve, will come into the process as it moves forward, and I think developers will find it so much easier than they think it will be. So it's just getting it embedded, and say I'll pick those enforcement issues up. So if we can support that report, we can get it going.
Thank you. I think we go to the vote then. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Abstentions? Okay, Councillor Gibbons, over to you.
Thank you. Those of you who are old hands will know that this is my regular spot at every council meeting to talk about corporate parenting and remind you that you are all corporate parents. So we've welcomed a new councillor. It may come as a surprise to you that you are now a parent, a corporate parent to our children in North Somerset. And I'm sure that you've had a chance to read through some of the documents which outline your responsibilities and what we're doing. And also, you've probably all read the report, I hope, and the data, so I won't need to go through it in detail. We're focusing a little bit this time on our children in care who are in foster care. And I don't know how much you all know about our Mockingbird system, but it is one of the things that I think we're rightly very proud of in North Somerset. We were something of a pioneer with this, in fact, when we started the Mockingbird project in 2019, and we're now about to launch the 5th constellation. So what basically it does is to provide that sort of network for foster carers to be able to rely upon each other in a sort of family structure around a hub carer. And I would say that that makes the job of being a foster carer much more supported and attractive. And as you well know, as I'm always saying it, we do need more and more in-house foster carers if we're to deliver the best possible care for young people who do or can't stay with their families for whatever reason. So I think if you read through the details about Mockingbird and you're fully au fait with what it does and what it can do for people, that puts you in a good position as councillors and community leaders out there to be able to talk to members of your community about what it would be like to be a foster carer and the sort of support that's there, and also be part of something that's quite innovative. In fact, we're very proud to have recently become part of the Southwest Regional Recruitment Hub. I wanted to get the words correct. And this means that we'll be coordinating recruitment activity across all local authorities in the Southwest and hope to increase recruitment by at least 20%. Mockingbird is a vital part of our plans. So again, I'm just reminding those who know and highlighting it to those who don't to ask me anything you like or contact any of our team to find out a bit more about becoming a foster parent. In terms of being a corporate parent, you'll see in the report that it lists a number of things that you need to do. Understanding who our children are. Come along to our corporate parenting panel. I'm always asking, but anybody is welcome. And we have 6 meetings a year, 3 of which are with our young people. And they are very interesting and challenging because we hear directly from people who experience this, what they feel, what they need, and yeah, it can be quite upsetting, it can be very moving, and it can be very encouraging, but it's only by listening to them directly that we really understand and can improve what we do for people. Then, again, we are in full council here, and we haven't talked about this, but at the back of your minds, I would ask that you consider our children and young people in all key decisions we make, whether it's planning or biodiversity or anything else. Everything we do affects young people, it affects their futures, and it affects particularly those young people we're corporate parents to. Support our foster carers. As I've said, we've agreed by council to do certain things for them, such as exemption from council tax, which shows our commitment to what they do for us and helps them stand out. And continue to support our care experienced young people through the Next Steps Fund, which is a small fund that we have to support young people if they have an additional need for equipment in training, or maybe they need a little bit of extra money to get to a job interview, or they need to access some additional training. It's just the sort of fund that a child would go to their parent for a bit of extra help. And, of course, include our children, young people and foster carers in all our events if we possibly can. And I have to thank the previous chair and our current chair for the fact that our foster families are always included in an invitation to watch the carnival from the luxury of the Winter Gardens. And we had a good turnout again this year. Finally, I'd like to thank those councillors who attended the Care Leavers Christmas party. I know I didn't see everybody. We all attended at different times, but I know that people did attend, and it was much appreciated by the team and by the young people themselves. And I would also like to thank all of you who contributed to the Christmas fund for our older care experienced people. And just to say that if you haven't done it, it's not too late. It's never too late to help our young people. And finally, I would just like to say that we are welcoming our new Director of Children's Services, Claire Shields, who helped in the production of this report. So thank you. And she's sitting over there. So welcome. And one final request is something I chatted about with our young director some time ago, and I'm not going to ask you to do it here and now, but I would love it if you could get in touch with me or Beth Swan and just give us one word about what being a corporate parent means to you. And we hope that we can develop a word cloud that we can put on our website just to add to the promise, just to show that we are always thinking about our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, for that report, and I think we're all noting it and taking interest. Do people want to comment on the report?
Yeah, I think I will. Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. I think that so often our portfolios, our workload, the things that people email you about as a councillor might be the pothole or the parking issue, and it's pretty rare that I get an email about being a foster carer or a child in care in my district, in my ward. But when I use my social media channels, and I do because I communicate about a road being closed or whatever, I do also think, actually, you know what I can do is I can share the foster caring website and the posts on Facebook and the messaging. And if I'm thinking about a newsletter that could go to my community, it doesn't have to be the thing that I always get an email about. It could be, I want to promote the work of our foster carers. And I just wanted to kind of share that we all have a role to play, and I know that that's what your corporate parenting report is trying to support us to do. But we don't have to set the narrative only to, I don't know, the physical environment, because of course our children matter, and the children in our communities matter, and so there's a family in my village who are foster carers. They've become foster carers in the past couple of years. I don't think that 5 years ago we would have looked at them and gone, you're definitely going to be foster carers. And I think that that's it. We don't know who our next foster carers will be in our village and in our towns and down our street. And this family have 2 young children already, but have taken in a teenager. You know, there's kind of stereotypes, and we need to start breaking those stereotypes, because we don't know what the next foster carers look like. The father, who's been the foster parent, he came to a community meeting at the parish hall about housing, and he recognised that when the 16-year-old becomes 18 or 19, they might want to live independently. But do you know what? They kind of need to stay close to that foster parenting family. And so what his ask was, is we do need affordable housing in every village, in every town, on every street, so that, and it might be 1 beds, it's not always a family house that's needed, but it's the 1 bed for that care leaver, so that they can still stay connected to that foster family they're already connected to. I also know that that family benefits from being part of the Mockingbird model, and so for that reason, you know, I kind of want to speak up, because I know that that's benefited them in that context of when you're a parent, and you're having a tough day with your kid who's just turned 8 or 9 or 15, you phone your sibling or your cousin who's also got a 15-year-old, and you ask, what are they using in their toolbox with a challenging circumstance? And for me, what I've interpreted Mockingbird as being is reaching out to another person who has experience of being a parent of a child at that age, or a foster parent, and using that support network, because when you're parenting, you're not doing it alone, and this is recognising that being a foster parent is challenging, but if we can add that supporting network, then we'll continue to help families and to help those young people in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget.
Can I just respond to Bridget quickly? Oh, do them both together, yes.
Thank you, Chair. To very much back up Catherine and Bridget in what they've been saying about our role as corporate parents, and to remind us all that there is another event, or another way we can get involved, which is what's called the Children in Care Council, which doesn't give you much idea of what it is. I've been along just a couple of times, and it involves going to the Games Cafe just along the road from here and playing games with some of the children in care. And they're lovely. They really are. It's great fun. It's one of those things where you can do something useful and have a good time.
Thank you, Joe. Catherine, do you...
Yes, thank you, Bridget, for that. Yes, you're absolutely right. I know the family you mean, and yeah, it's fantastic, Mockingbird, because it just means that you have somebody you can ring up at 2 o'clock in the morning when, you know, just like you might if you had an extended family, and you can talk and vent or whatever, and there's the support for respite care and all sorts of things. It's just a fantastic model. You're right, Bridget. I think in future I will make sure we include the links to our Facebook and Twitter posts that we I share widely, but it'd be good if every councillor had access to them and could share them also through their networks. That would be fantastic. And it's remiss of me not to have done it before. I guess I thought you were all online constantly. And yeah, just to support what Joe said, yes, it's great to attend that council meeting, and I'm sure all are welcome. Sometimes it's online as well, which may be easier for some members, you know. So again, we will get details of that out to all of you, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And you need to, because you're next. Petition. So on to item 10.
So I'm first with the petitions, am I? I thought it was Bridget. Okay, it's our show, Bridget. Right. So I'm here today to present a petition that was organised by the residents of my ward and largely by a lady called Mrs. Julia Flowers of 29 Charter Road. But it has implications for the whole of Western, and I would say indeed North Somerset. And basically the title of the petition is, it's a petition for the maintenance of our homes, and they're asking for North Somerset to intervene and assist with Alliance Homes, who they wish to get a commitment from Alliance Homes to soundproofing and maintaining their homes. Due to our homes not being properly soundproofed, this is making noise travel, giving most people a lack of privacy in their own home. If Alliance Homes were able to take action for noise-cancelling features in our homes, we strongly believe it would minimise antisocial behaviour, stress to tenants, and would certainly halt the breakdown in neighbourhood friendships, as well as the community cohesion. We are working to get Alliance Homes to address the situation of sound travelling through our homes so that we can address the behaviours and breakdowns that come with it much quicker. Our goal is to have Alliance Homes help us improve sound insulation in all homes, as well as help us with better upkeep of our homes when they need urgent maintenance. Please, please support us and our communities in pushing this towards our goal. I have also a number of comments that the over 200 people who signed this have made, but I think in terms of time, I will not read them out. I will merely submit them with the petition. So thank you very much on behalf of my residents.
Yes, please, you can bring the submission up in a minute, later on at the end of the meeting. And Bridget, you want to say something?
Yeah. I'm holding a petition, but have been made aware from the solicitor that it doesn't meet the Constitution. Therefore, I'll refer to it in the next item, which is a motion around Gaza and peace. Thank you.
Thank you. We all want a 5-minute stand-up, or are we all right just to carry on? No? Carry on? Okay. In that case, that's it. You can't go anywhere now for the next 2 hours. Moving on then to item 11. Joe, could I ask you to introduce your motion?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for this opportunity. And it's about Gaza and the idea of a ceasefire. The wording was originally published the week before last, between Christmas and New Year, when there was very little opportunity to consult with anyone on that wording. So by arrangement between myself and some other members and under the guidance of our solicitor, Nick, we have an amended version which has been circulated by email, and there are paper copies around, and that's what I'm going to speak to. So I'll start off by reading the amended version. This council expresses deep sympathy for all those affected by the conflict in Israel and Palestine. To those in the North Somerset area who've been affected by this conflict, we offer our support in this difficult time. This council calls for an immediate release of all hostages and a sustainable ceasefire to allow more aid and the possibility of a peaceful resolution. This council believes that Muslims, Jews and people of all faiths and no faith should feel safe in North Somerset and throughout the world, and condemns the increase in anti-Semitic and Islamophobic abuse and violence. Council thanks community leaders for the role they are playing in reducing tensions at this sensitive and difficult time. This council resolves to write to the Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary and North Somerset's 2 members of Parliament, stating that the council supports a sustainable and lasting ceasefire and asking them to do all in their power to work towards a viable 2-state solution. We also ask that they recognise with additional funding the key role local authorities play in promoting cohesion and understanding throughout their communities by supporting the many voluntary organisations and faith groups who work together to help those affected by this and other conflicts. My first reaction when someone asked me to create this motion and speak to it was to say no, that this is not something that's relevant to North Somerset, and in any case, I thought that it would be completely ineffective. Paragraph 14.3 of our Constitution says motions must be about matters for which the Council has a responsibility or which affect the district. Of course, we have no responsibility for foreign policy, but it isn't as simple as that. I realise that many people, like me, were horrified and sickened by the Hamas attacks on the 7th of October, and then that we had an immediate reflex sense of dread as to what the Israeli response would be. I have an Israeli friend who lives in Jerusalem, as well as a number of British Jewish friends, so I was aware how deeply traumatizing to their sense of safety the Hamas attacks were. I doubt that many of us imagined the Israeli response would be quite as big or go on quite as long as it has. Many of us thought at the beginning that Israel was responding in exactly the way the terrorists wanted, a way guaranteed to produce generations of traumatized people whose main motivation in life will be to kill Israelis. That's what I see happening. That's what many of our residents see happening. And that's why that's why they are asking us to respond by saying to the government, please do what you can to get this to stop, and everything in your power to lessen the damage. Apart from residents asking us to put a ceasefire motion, and the petition that Bridget mentioned has got over 700 signatures on it, what's this got to do with North Somerset? Many of us have friends and relations directly involved on both sides, and all of us depend on this part of the world. Maybe we didn't realise until the Russian invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago how much we depend on Ukrainian wheat and Russian oil and gas, but we all already know how much we depend on shipping through the Suez Canal. We also know that friends and relations of people from throughout the Middle East are our residents. I then realised that our leaders, Councillors Bell and Gibbons, put out a statement on the 16th of October calling for peace and an end to the needless suffering and deaths of innocent men, women and children in Israel and Palestine. That whole statement has been read in full earlier on this evening. Many other local authorities have put forward similar motions or resolutions. It occurred to me that while our government doesn't notice what North Somerset thinks, I imagine, when we become part of a significant number of authorities, each representing a significant number of residents, it begins to have some meaning at the highest level. Our government is constantly nuancing how to use its influence on the international stage. As they do this, an awareness that many representative bodies like us want them to ask for an end to violence now will nudge them to making this request more urgent. David Cameron will meet with Anthony Blinken from time to time, and if he knows that there is a strong weight of opinion at home that wants a ceasefire now, then it will be easier for him to ask for that. The Israeli ambassador will also be reporting home regularly, I'm sure, what British public opinion thinks, and I imagine will give more weight to what we say than to the street protests. It may not be worth much, but it is worth doing. I wrote the initial motion between Christmas and New Year, as I've said, when there was very little opportunity to consult with anyone on the best wording. I hope that councillors will feel that they can support what is before them now, which has been arranged in consultation with many colleagues, and in so doing, this council will be putting its weight behind limiting suffering in this awful situation.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Petty? And thank you. Do we have 7 people who actually want to debate this? Thank you. We've got our 7. Now I hand over to Solicitor to clarify the motion that has been read out.
So just members, you'll recall at last meeting we jumped again from a tabled motion to an amended motion, and there was some confusion at that meeting as to what you were considering. So just to be clear, the Councillor Tristram has introduced his tabled motion, and that has been seconded by Councillor Petty. You have voted to have a debate. In introducing his motion, Councillor Tristram has also put forward joint wording, which I believe Councillor Gibbons is putting forward as an amendment, and hopefully, if that is seconded, that can be then taken on by Councillor Tristram as the overall motion. So if Councillor Gibbons can confirm she is moving the amendment, and as a seconder, thank you, Councillor Young. So that now becomes the substantive motion. So you are debating the motion that Councillor Tristram handed out in his email earlier today and in the paperwork that is available tonight.
Is that clear to everybody? Yes? Do I have thumbs up that it's clear? Jolly good. Right, over to you. We've had more than 7 people who want to speak about it, so anybody want to... Oh, I've just been reminded, Bridget, that you're going to come in early.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the speakers who came this evening, because I know it's not easy to come and speak at our full council meetings, and I'm aware that many of them took time to prepare what they wanted to say. I feel that we obviously have a very sensitive and very emotional subject in front of us, but I'm confident that this is the right time to talk about it, an important thing to talk about. As indicated before, I'm holding a petition that has been signed by nearly 700 people in our community, and they are asking for North Somerset Council to support a ceasefire, and if this motion is successful, I intend to forward these signatures to the intended recipients of the council letter. So we've stated in our motion that it would go to the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, and our members of Parliament. I think that others are right to point out the horrific events that took place on the 7th of October, and that I am appalled by what took place then. However, as the days have unfolded, the behaviour of the Israeli government in their slaughtering of innocent people and of civilians, significant numbers of children, significant numbers of women, I have just felt heartbroken. And I know that we are speaking for our residents when we are raising our voices. We are representatives of our residents. And these signatures and the people who I speak to and the people who have contacted me make it clear to me that we have a voice and we are able to raise that voice as a council, and we are able to tell the government that we call for a ceasefire. I used to live with a friend called Celia, and she's a physiotherapist. In 2022, she travelled to Palestine, and she worked with physiotherapists in the hospitals to design their work together for babies and children. She continues to be in touch with those where she can. She knows that 37 of her colleague physiotherapists have died since the start of this fighting. She knows that medical staff now take their children to work with them, so that if they die together. And I think that we're a humanitarian international population. And I just worry that if something like that was happening here, I would like leaders in other countries to be speaking up and saying how appalled they are by what is taking place. So that is what we are doing. I am standing up and representing my residents with the concern that we stand up for you as people in another country at what is happening here. Since October, 27,000 people have been killed. That is every resident of Nailsea and every resident of Backwell since October, and I think that that is just extremely horrific. So that is why I'm standing up and supporting our motion to write and raise our voice as North Somerset Council to our government to say they should be doing more. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget, and present the, the petition when we're finished. I think, Catherine, you wanted to...
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank Councillor Tristram for taking the time to discuss this motion with me. And I'll admit that when I first saw the motion, I thought to myself, this isn't something for North Somerset, because this is completely outside the remit of what we do. And though, like everybody, we are all horrified at the tragic events that are unfolding, sadly, not just in the Middle East, but other places. You know, I think that I often reflect that we are fortunate in that we feel we have peace and security. And we realize when we look at the news, and we are lucky that we see these events in the safety of our living rooms, how precious but how fragile that security and peace is. And in a sense, I suppose we all have a duty to think about people that are affected by it. So my focus very much wanted to be about those people in North Somerset who are affected by this directly or indirectly, those victims of other conflicts across the world who are traumatized and triggered very much by the things that they see happening. And I've been privileged to attend events run by organizations like Race Equality North Somerset or Refugees Welcome, where they have gone out of their way to bring people from all these different communities together and foster an ability to understand each other's point of view, and more than anything, to enable people to feel that they can talk about these issues in a safe space where they don't feel fear, because increasingly a lot of people from the communities that are affected by the conflict in Palestine and Israel are afraid to speak because of who they are and how they may be judged and how people may see they are somehow responsible for these terrible events. So I think that is why I approached Councillor Tristram to say, could we bring this motion back into that space where we can be asking the government to help us do more to help the people we are directly dealing with in our community, to help us give more resources to these organizations and faith groups that work on a daily basis with us and with those members of our community who are struggling with the events that they see and the attitudes that they hear, and just wondering, you know, what do they tell their children when they go to school? How do I react if someone mentions this? And in some cases, we have got to the point where schools are actually saying that these matters cannot be discussed because they are so worried about it triggering some kind of bullying incident. So, as I say, that is the focus, or the main focus of the amendment that Councillor Tristram and I discussed. And I'm grateful for him taking on board that. And I really do hope that with the voices of our councillors behind it, perhaps the government will listen and support all local authorities, not just us, but all local authorities, to do more to support their residents, to understand how to deal with members of their community who are deeply affected by this, and indeed how we can work together to show that we support everybody who is affected by conflict and the trauma. The things that are going on here in Israel, in Palestine, in Ukraine, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, they don't end when the news moves on. These are families and people that will be traumatized for generations, and infrastructures that will take years to be rebuilt. So that's all I want to say. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Tristram, for taking on board my amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Shopland, David? I think you wanted to say something?
Oh, if I may, please.
Yes?
Like everyone else in this chamber, I've the deepest sympathy and concern for those caught up in the terrible events that are happening in Gaza. But I feel that a little more should be known as to how this situation has arisen, because if we know how this situation arose, we may stand a chance of ensuring that it never arises again anywhere else in the world. During the Great War, Britain and France were competing for the control of the Middle East, largely because of the oil fields. And they aimed to divide it up when the Ottoman Empire fell apart and the Turks were defeated. So they drew a line basically from Acre on the Mediterranean coast to a place called Kirkuk which was on the Persian border. East was French, south was British. But the one thing they couldn't agree upon was Palestine, because that was the only access to the sea. The Americans were totally opposed to any European power extending its empire, colonial interests after the Great War, and they were afraid that the Americans would view the deal they'd hatched as colonial expansion. So Lloyd George, being a wily bird, suggested that a part of Palestine be designated as a Zionist refuge so that Jews could go and settle in Palestine. This was agreed. It came to a question of then administering it, and the League of Nations set up a mandate and appointed Britain to carry out the mandate. We did, after a fashion, relatively successful until Hitler arrived with the Nuremberg speeches and the persecutions of the Jews, and then the numbers of Jews increased dramatically. And the problem then became that the new settlers were displacing the people who were living there, the Arabs, which obviously caused great tension. There were riots on both sides against the British, and they culminated in 1948 in the Stern Gang, which you've never heard of, most of you, and major atrocities against British troops by the Jews. So we pulled out. The result was the formation of Israel. Now, the difficulty is this, in the situation that we have, that there are two races claiming the same land as their ancestral home, coupled with the wish that they live there in their own fashion. Now, unfortunately, history has shown that that is only ever resolved by bloodshed. I do not think any outside force will stop what is happening in Gaza today. It will run to its natural conclusion, terrible as that may be. But to me, the thing is that we must be prepared then to help and sort matters out, give them the supplies, and make sure that such a thing never happens again. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you for your history lesson, David. That was useful, I'm sure, for some people. I think, Oliver Ellis, you want to speak next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just sort of making everyone aware that, first of all, any innocent loss is absolutely a tragedy. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. The wording of the motion seems maybe slightly overlooked by everyone, is a sustainable ceasefire. This is not writing to the government for an immediate ceasefire, as it says in this wording. Because if we look at the situation in whole, you've got Hamas making statements, as soon as we get a chance, we will attack again. So if you're asking for an immediate ceasefire with a terrorist, if you're thinking you're going to get an immediate ceasefire with a terrorist group, the government won't support that. A sustainable ceasefire will be when it's got two groups that can negotiate. That's not at this moment in time, because one side at the moment has clearly said, as soon as we get another chance, we will attack.
Thank you. Roger, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's really quite a difficult subject, this, isn't it? I would love to see a lasting solution to the problems in Gaza and to the war in Ukraine and Syria and, well, let's be honest, to all the fighting in the world. And I therefore support everything that this motion is designed to support. But I can't support this motion. The idea of a two-state solution was formulated before I was born, and it would seem to be an exercise in hubris for North Somerset Council to believe that it can in some way have an impact on international events that are well outside of its control and remit. I believe North Somerset Council should stay within its remit as a local authority and leave international politics to those who are elected to make such decisions and who have all the required expertise at hand. Standing Order 14, motions on notice, has already been mentioned that motions must be about matters for which the council has responsibility or which affect the district. Calling for a ceasefire, I think, isn't within our responsibility and doesn't affect our district. Lancaster City Council refused a debate on this matter in December on similar grounds to our Standing Order 14, as have Hastings Borough Council and a number of others. I do not want to vote against this motion, but as it clearly falls outside of my remit as a local councillor and is against the North Somerset Council constitution, I cannot see how I can do anything but vote against it. I would therefore ask Councillor Tristram to save me from voting against something that I actually support by withdrawing this motion, as it is clearly against our constitution.
Thank you. The solicitor is... Carry on. Well, thank you, Roger. Annamika, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I did actually. I came this evening not thinking I was going to say anything about this, so I've not prepared anything. So if I speak absolute gibberish, please excuse me. Over the last few months, I've been profoundly moved by, like everybody, with everything that I've seen on the news. And I remember there was a point just over the Christmas period where I was asked to do some reading in church. Now, I'm not a church-going person, but because I'm now considered a counsellor, I was asked to do a reading, which included some words to do with Israel and peace on earth. And I remember reading that and feeling profoundly sad that I was, having to say all these things at a time when the most awful atrocities were happening in Palestine and in Israel. And I just, first of all, want to thank the speakers who were here this evening, who spoke so very movingly about the conflict and how everyone on both sides is so badly affected by all of this. And I think I understand what people might think, that this is outside our remit, but I'm not sure that that's the point of this motion. I think for me the point of this motion is to express that we in North Somerset represent our communities, and that our communities are in many ways profoundly upset about all these things that are going on. And I defy anybody to tell me that they haven't attended a social event over the last few months where this hasn't been the topic of conversation. I defy anyone to tell me that they didn't have a dinner party in peace and quiet, or drinks in the pub with their friends, or attend anything where somebody hasn't talked about how upset they are about all these images that we see on our TV screen, but we're thankfully in a safe location. So for me, supporting this motion is not about thinking that we have some magical wand and that we can make things better and that we can, find a solution to a problem that's been around since World War II, as was so, beautifully explained earlier. I think for me, supporting this motion is an expression of saying the people in our communities have expressed a wish to say these things and to support peaceful resolution, but also to express that as a community we need to support each other, and I think for me that is the point of this motion. And I think that if I listen to everybody that I've spoken to over the last few months of all ages, people are seriously concerned about this and don't know how to affect any change. And I think if they could hear us say that we would want that change and that we support this motion, I think they would be very grateful. So I don't know if any of that made any sense, but I'm glad that I've said it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Helen, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'll just be really brief, actually, because a lot of what I planned to say had been said really eloquently by a lot of the public speakers that have spoken tonight, and also, you know, many of the councillors who've already spoken. And I think Tom Leindorfer said this best earlier when he said, we can't stand aside and do nothing. So it's as simple as that for me. And this may not be, you know, Roger, I get what you're saying. It's, you know, it's not something that, you know, potentially affects the council or is part of our business. But as has also been said, it does affect a lot of the people we represent in one way or another. And I think, you know, we need to vote for this motion for that reason. So, thanks.
Thank you, Helen. Sue Mason, Councillor Mason.
Thank you. I have, like many people, read this and thought, yes, this is how we are all, as a country, as a world, we are concerned about what is happening there. And yes, so therefore, I support what has been written. But I am also well aware of what Roger has said, that it is not under our remit here. So I am torn whether to vote yes, to abstain, or to vote no. So I'm still waiting for guidance, which Roger has given us, and I would hope that Nick up on the bench there will give us more, because I don't know how to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for telling us about your dilemma. Tom.
Yeah, that's the first one for me. So, I don't know, it's kind of sad that I have to, this is my first kind of thing to talk on. Those who are wondering whether to abstain or vote no on whether this is legally right or not, voting no, it's going to affect me more than it's going to affect anyone else. Abstaining's, you know, it will let it go through. Voting yes is a small portion of our time to just, you know, put our pressure on the government and everyone to get this put through. But voting no means that, you know, it's going to be my generation that has to pick up the pieces of all of the people being displaced in Gaza and all of the horrific action that, you know, is soon to come. And, you know, I'm, like I say, this doesn't mean that it's going to actually happen, but then maybe the people of North Somerset will have some peace of mind that we tried. We tried to do good, and I think that, you know, that is a bit. And the people that some of us elected higher up aren't doing it, so I think the people that are elected a little bit lower down, who have that, you know, one-to-one conversations with people and are more down, you know, on the ground about what people want, should put that pressure higher up on government. And, you know, if we sit there and go, well, it's none of our, you know, it's none of our problem, it's, you know, it's a more higher up thing to deal with, then how are people going to take us, you know, take us seriously? How are, you know, the government going to take us as a council seriously if we just think, you know, well, it's them to deal with, it's not us? So, you know, it is absolutely shocking, and it will stay with me for life. And, you know, just like I think probably 9/11 stayed with a lot of you people for life, I wasn't there to see this. This is, you know, this is something similar to me, in that I will always remember this. And I think that, you know, that's why I'm going to vote yes. And I think that people that, you know, if you're torn whether this is a legal matter, then just abstain, because it, you know, it doesn't really affect you, but it might affect us if we don't vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I'm sorry that, yes, the first time you're speaking, it's about something so sad. Peter Burden.
Thank you. I'm really torn on this one as well. I think nobody with a brain or a conscience can support what is going on at the moment. And I think it's horrendous. I hate it. But I've also sat in chambers a long time ago where people were trying to get councils to complain about government selling gunboats to Chile. and all the rest, and had instilled into me that you really must focus on what you're empowered to do, otherwise you bring the institution into disrepute and other things you say can be said to be meaningless. But, Chairman, I cannot vote against a full proposition in this way. What I'm really wondering, Chairman, is if the movers of this would take out some wording. And if they took out the wording to work towards a two-state solution, I would find I could support this, because I think we can logically bring everything else in this motion down to the feelings of our constituents and our own gut feeling. To work towards a two-state solution, as Roger said, was around before he was born. I'm trying to think when it was first talked about, and I can't. So I think that is the foreign policy dilemma which this council's got, and if that dilemma was taken out, I could, with a very clear conscience, support the motion.
I think we are working with the motion that has been presented to us, and I think you are enunciating a dilemma that a number of people in the council...
In which case, can I float the boat and formally move that wording be removed from the motion?
So you want to propose an amendment?
Yes, that the reference to the two-state solution be removed from the motion, albeit it's something I believe in, but I don't believe it's within the authority of this council to push towards.
So your motion, you are proposing an amendment that the wording be removed from the motion. Do you have a seconder? A seconder there? Councillor Williams? All those in favour of that amendment? No, it's not. Against? I'm sorry, the amendment is lost. The solicitor is coming.
So, Chairperson, there have been a couple, principally obviously Councillors Whitfield and Mason, who have queried the legality and the constitutional effect of this motion as amended. It will not surprise you to know that I have gone through the wording of this very carefully, and I take the view it is within the Constitution, because it is not this council exercising any decision. This council is empowered to make representations to government, and that, in the way this has been amended, is all that it is doing. To explain further, Councillor Petty's petition was asking the council put out a statement on foreign policy, and that's why I ruled that one not in compliance with the Constitution. That is not the case with this motion. This motion is calling on government to do things. The council does have that power. It cannot make foreign policy. That is for good. Well, ignore your suggestions and remonstrations with it, but this, I believe, is within your power to do, because all you are doing is making representations to government about matters they are, that fall within their purview, not within yours.
Thank you for that.
Chair, can I move that the vote be taken?
Sorry. Who,
it's a perfectly valid.
Pardon?
Can I move that we take the vote, Chair?
Sorry. The leader moves that we take a vote. Is that seconded? I do. Yeah. Do I say I believe there's been... I think this is, we've had a long discussion. I think there's a lot of people who've explained their views. I'm in favour of taking the vote now. So can I have a vote in favour of the motion presented by...
So Chairman,
sorry.
You have to vote on that now. So it has been moved that you moved straight to the vote.
Oh, so
you are supportive. The Chamber now has to decide whether to go straight to the vote now.
Do you vote to go to the vote?
You do.
You do. Thank you. Sorry I'm glad I've got the solicitor here, because I'm getting a bit confused. So can we have a vote on the motion presented, please? All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? All those abstaining? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank We now come to question time. Or do you want your 5-minute break now? No. I keep trying. Can I remind you, please, can I remind you of how question time is run? You put your hand up, you go on a list, I invite you to speak, you say which executive member your question is aimed at, or aimed for, should I say, rather than at. You then pose your question without too much preamble. The executive member answers your question. If you want to follow up, you go back to the bottom of the list. Okay? All understand? Right. So, who's that down there? Councillor Ellis, I think you got your hand up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For Executive Member for Transport, Councillor Youngs. I've had many emails, talked to many people about the proposal that was put forward at the Backwell lights, as I raised last time. I've had messages, people were queuing out the door at the consultation. There's utter fury and anger that these proposals were considered and brought forwards. Will the council now confirm that they will drop this plan? Because I can tell you how much anger it has brought.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. I've spoken quite actively and replied to a number of emails myself about the Backwell proposals, and I'll say here what I've said already to people within Backwell and indeed to the local ward councillor. We have now completed the consultation. It closed on the 29th of December. The responses to it are being analysed. We agreed through the executive some months ago that the process for determining what happened next would be that the consultation responses for all of the BSIP consultations would then be looked at in conjunction with the evidence for the original proposal. That would come to me as the executive member and I would make a decision. It's not been delegated to anybody else. That pack has not yet come to me. I'm expecting, I haven't got a specific date for it, but my expectation is that it will be at some point during this month that we receive the full analysis of the consultation, and then there will be a decision, and until that has taken place, I can't make any comment on what that decision will be.
Thank you very much. Could you just keep us updated when that happens?
Could I have
Councillor
Thornton? Helen? Where are you?
Yeah. Hi, thanks for that, Wendy. Hannah, this is for you again, sorry. I'm very pleased that the 126 bus from Weston to Wells has been reinstated and that it picks up and drops off in the ward I represent, Uphill Ward. But I want to ask the exec member how passenger numbers are going to be monitored on the service, because I used the bus on Saturday to go to Wells, and both buses that I took to Wells and back were absolutely packed, with some people having to stand for significant amounts of time. And in one case, a man with a very large pushchair was not allowed to board the bus because there was no room and the pushchair was not collapsible. So Saturday, this recent Saturday, may have been particularly busy because it was the first Saturday the new service had run, and the weather was actually quite reasonable for the first time in weeks or months. And of course, it's also the case that there are fewer buses running on a Saturday. But if the demand on Saturdays turns out to be as great as weekdays, it would be useful to get the figures and ask First Bus to put more services on at weekends if our funding allows. And I'm sure that First Bus themselves would find it very profitable. So the question briefly, I could have said it very briefly, couldn't I, is how is it going to be monitored?
Thank you, Councillor Thornton. I'm very sorry to hear that there are people who can't get on the bus because it's so busy. I genuinely, I mean, that's very frustrating, isn't it? But I am also, and equally, it's very frustrating to have to stand. But I am delighted to hear that there is such use of the service, which has been specifically financially supported by the council at this point because of popular demand. In terms of the monitoring, we receive monthly monitoring reports. There is a bit of a time lag on them, so we don't get them first of the month for the previous month, but we work regularly with First and other providers, and I'm very happy to provide those reports back of passenger numbers. If we get people, if you receive concerns as local councillors that people want to report that they tried to get on the bus that they couldn't, of course we won't have a monitor of that. So if you want to feed those things through to me, I'm very happy to take them up so we can use them as evidence of demand for the service. But I'm very happy to share numbers in due course when we have them.
Thank you, Hannah. Steve Bridger?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. With apologies, this is a question for Councillor Caniford. It's a rather nerdy planning policy question, Mark, sorry. We've seen a number of quite significant changes to national planning policy since the end of October, and I think many residents are under the impression that the Council is now in a much stronger position to defend speculative development, particularly given the government has removed the requirement for local planning authorities to maintain this rolling 5-year housing land supply of deliverable sites for housing. However, it's my understanding that that's only the case where the local planning authority has a development plan that's been adopted within the last 5 years. So given that North Somerset's last tested position was, rightly or wrongly, we could only demonstrate 3.5 years, and our current local plan was adopted in January 2017, which is over 5 years ago, I'd be grateful if the executive member could confirm to me and clarify for residents whether North Somerset is still vulnerable if taken to appeal until such time we can adopt our new local plan later this year or early next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bridger. And I think it's a really good question in the sense that I think there's quite a lot of confusion out there in the public and with our residents. The guidance that we were given in October has allowed us to reduce, well, it's given us the encouragement to reduce the demands that government were making on us for the 21,000 houses in North Somerset, and we are now working to our own housing assessment needs, as you well know. However, this does still not take away the pressure that developers are putting on the council to develop on their options and their land. So they will still continually try to push for speculative planning applications until we have an adopted local plan and we can clearly state where we as a council feel that development should be or where it should be, where we strategically think it should be. So in terms of are we safe? No, not until we got the local plan done, and that's why it's so important for us to get it through. Is the guidance helpful? Yes, it is helpful, but it's not protecting us. So I think it's really important that that guidance hasn't taken away the threat. It's still there.
Thank you. Councillor Kieran Cronolly, where are you, Kieran?
I'm same place as last time. So my questions to Councillor Jennifer Maris. Trying to get access to NHS dentists is almost impossible. I would go as far as to say it's a scandal. And I looked on the NHS website today, and there are none in North Somerset accepting new NHS patients, and I know you all know that. I've been in conversation with an organisation that is keen to deliver dental services locally, but it's finding there are various obstacles in the way into doing so. So my question is, would you be willing to meet with them to learn about those obstacles, but predominantly work with me to provide a letter outlining the urgent need for dentists locally, so that can hopefully be used to try and quicken their assessment of their application so we can get more dentists quicker?
Thank you, Councillor Connolly, for your question. Yes, in a word, yes, absolutely. And in a few more words, Councillor Thornton and I, Councillor Thornton as chair of HOSP, Health Overview and Scrutiny Panel, and myself as chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, feel that oral health is just incredibly important, and particularly with Councillor Thornton's insistence, I think we're going to try and put this very much on the public agenda for this year, just to bring it to the awareness of not only the health bodies that can try to speed things up, but also just our population's general understanding of it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that answer. Tom Dorr, Councillor Dorr, back to you again.
Thank you. My question is also for generally for housing. Of the percentage of the 40... I
don't think she's with you just yet.
Hello, it's for you. Of the 40% affordable housing, how much of this is going to be like 1-bed, 2-bed flats and more smaller accommodation rather than just the big 4-5 bedroom houses we're seeing being just shot up in the countryside?
I think possibly that's Councillor Caniford.
Caniford then, sorry.
Is that right, Mark?
I'm not sure if that's planning or housing.
Sorry, as you guided that to Jenna, I wasn't paying attention.
Shall I repeat?
However, I think I got the gist of the thing. In terms of the 40% housing, there is a needs assessment done on that, and I think if Jenny was still here, she'd explain it exactly, but I will get that split down for you, but it will depend on what we as a council feel is required. It's not something the developer gets to choose, so we will decide what is required and then we develop that policy. So I'll get a written answer back to you.
And I think, Tom, obviously your colleagues there will be advising you on which scrutiny panels to join, so that you can join the scrutiny panels that are particularly of your interest, and it sounds as if you've already got one idea, one panel there you might like to join already. So yeah. Caritas, Charles, where are you? You're still there?
I'm still here, yeah. I have a question for Jenna. I think it's you with the Equalities and Diversities brief. I just wanted to try and have another positive from this vote that we've just had, and I was wondering if you would be prepared to reach out to communities directly affected by the conflict we've just discussed and talk about practical measures that we as a local authority can do for people affected within our communities, and practical steps around education and support that we could take as a local authority with regards to this issue.
Also, in a word, yes. But I think also, I think there's a number of my colleagues who are already doing this, working very hard with the NGOs out there that are supporting our residents, such as Race Equality North Somerset and refugee groups. So to give them some support and to draw attention to what's already being done. But yes, I would.
Thank you. Peter, are you? Councillor Crew? Oh, there you are at the back.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a question to all the executive.
All the executive.
Will it be possible for the executive members to read the report for council together before it comes here, to avoid every single executive member thanking another executive member for the reports they've done?
I don't think that needs an on. I think it was heard. Councillor Gibbons, I think you're the last.
I didn't have a question, no.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. That very streamlined question time. Thank you. So, shall we move on? Item 13, matters referred from previous meeting, none. Yes. Item 14, leaders' announcement. I think, Mike, you're going to take item 22 under this as well. Is that all right?
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's move. So we're going to move item 22, which is the update on emergency budget decisions, forward as part of the leaders' announcements, if that's okay, and then we don't leave it right until the very end, although hopefully we're not going to be here very much longer together.
It's our discretion to move an item on the agenda, and we felt that as Mike would be presenting it on item 22, he might as well bring it forward. It's not because he wants to go early.
So without wanting to upset Councillor Crew, thank you for moving the item around. So obviously the purpose of the report is to update members on our in-year financial pressures and the urgent action that the officer team is taking to mitigate and contain these pressures. All members received an update on this from Joe Walker a few days ago. It felt like weeks and weeks ago, but actually I realise now it was only a few days ago, such is the pace at which we're moving through this. But this update is really just to make sure that everyone's got the fullest picture possible and have an opportunity to ask any questions. In the current financial year, we are forecasting that our expenditure will exceed the available budget by £2.3 million. Members will particularly note that that's a significant change from the last monthly monitor report that went to the executive, and it shows the serious financial challenges that we're facing in year. This forecast deficit of 2.3 million is despite all of the work that we've already done to mitigate some of those cost pressures, and the report sets out around £9 million worth of interventions and mitigations that have already been implemented. So I really want to emphasise that this is an unprecedented position. This is certainly not business as usual and a normal routine of our financial management. So we are really having to act in order to ensure that we balance the budget by the end of the year. You'll see from the update that we've been reviewing the savings that we'd identified already for next year to see what we can introduce more quickly. We've also looked at any spending that could be delayed or deferred or indeed cancelled altogether. And we are also looking at reviewing every single vacancy as it arises. We won't be filling them straight away, and that will be focused very much on need so that we can pause the recruitment of staff for the time being, again, to mitigate some of those cost pressures. Inevitably, as a result of some of these things, there will be some impacts on services as a result of these decisions. So what I would really ask colleagues to do is, in their contacts with officers and with residents, do emphasise the pressure that we're under at the moment, and hopefully be patient in terms of getting responses from officers and recognising the financial pressures that we're under. Whilst I'm offering this update, I also want to remind members that we obviously also have continuing work to develop the budget for the 24-25 financial year and to close the gap that we reported in December. There is an all-member briefing on the budget that's been arranged for 5 o'clock on the 29th of January, which will update you all on the latest work, and that's ahead of the cycle of decision making through the executive and then full council next month. I think we all recognise that our teams have worked extremely hard over many, many years. Austerity kicked in 2010 and has never really stopped for local government, and there has been an expectation that we are meeting increasing demand and increasing cost pressures with less and less tools to meet that demand. So I really want to just recognise all the hard work of officers across all of the directorates in trying to manage these in-year pressures and looking ahead. And in particular, the support of Amy and Mel in corporate services in driving a lot of that work. We've clearly got lots more work to do, both to balance the budget for this year and to deliver a balanced budget going forward. But the unrelenting cycle of pressures that we've got in terms of demand and in terms of costs is unavoidable and is going to continue for the years to come. So I hope we can all also send a clear message to government that we need intervention to support council services and local government finances, because if things carry on as they are, it is no exaggeration to say that we will see more and more local councils collapsing, because ultimately there is no way of meeting the demand and cost pressures that we experience. We saw in the local government finance settlement that we received the lowest increase in our funding in the region, nowhere near enough to meet the real cost pressures and demand pressures that we're experiencing. We know that our level of government funding is around £37 million a year less than the average English council. So you think about how transformational that would be if we even got a fraction of that to bring us back towards a level playing field. So we really are looking to government to intervene urgently to support us. I've had conversations with and written to both of our local MPs to get their support, and also direct to government twice now. And I hope that all colleagues will be able to support that in all the conversations that they have. And I don't know if Amy's got any technical points that she wants to mention, or Joe. Thank you.
It's an update. I don't think at this stage you'll have any detailed questions, but I do encourage you, if you can, to attend with Teams, the meeting on 5 o'clock, Monday the 29th of January, where we've got an all-member briefing on the budget. So please pop that in your diaries, and possibly there will be a recording that you can look at if you can't make the actual meeting. Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just make this point. We've had several budget briefings. This is another one coming up, and it's very useful because we speak to Mail, we put things on the table that's thought about, and then we have another meeting, comes back. It's very disappointing, the few members that turn up. I think the last one we did, I think we had about 9 of us. And I think it is important, it's an important issue. We know we don't get all the funding we should, but we also know we get a lot of additional funding for different projects. But I think it's important that members turn up for that briefing, otherwise we get to a budget setting meeting and we'll end up arguing over things which we could be arguing about now while we're going through the briefings.
Thank you. I do really support your statement that as many people as possible should try and attend the briefings. Councillor Bridger, Steve?
Yeah, I've just got a couple of brief points, actually, in terms of absolutely support what Mike has said, but just a point about definitions. Given that we're now in the space of effectively, only essential spending that supports the delivery of statutory services, which I think is the wording in the report, I think probably directors would agree, and Joe would agree, while there's some very commonly understood definitions of what a statutory function is and a discretionary function, to produce a definitive list is actually really quite a difficult thing. That said, I don't know whether, between now and that budget session we have, that scrutiny session we have at the end of the month, whether it would be helpful, I think, for members if we were able to see a list of the council's sort of statutory functions and responsibilities, and in her capacity as our Section 151, perhaps Amy's interpretation of what those responsibilities are. I think it's extra work, I know. It would be quite useful to see, just to get a sense of what's statutory and what's discretionary, where that's possible, because I think we are now in that space, aren't we? And I think we should also say that supporting the action proposed in this report shouldn't be misinterpreted as sort of normalising what's happening here, which is effectively the hollowing out of local government, which is the 4th emergency service, which frankly is an utter disgrace. Thank you.
Caritas.
I just wanted to raise with Mike the conversation around community engagement around the budget and ask him whether I applaud some of the warnings he's given to the public in recent press statements, but isn't it time to be, as Steve just mentioned, even more blunt about the situation and where we are and where we are at, and that we have a very honest conversation, because there still exists massive misconceptions about local authority funding that exists, and I think it's our duty to actually inform the public of how, not just for us, but for the entire local government sector, how dire the situation is. And I wonder whether you'll bear that in mind. And one other quick one, seeing as we're heading into an election time, whether it be his duty as well to lobby people of other parties with regards to the situation in local government, not just the current government. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cartman?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mike. It's a question for you, or possibly Councillor Gibbons, actually. I noticed the huge increase in spending on children's services, and I want to know what was driving that, because I saw a report this week that talks about independent care for children's placements and private companies making 20% profit, or £300 million a year, off the back of vulnerable children and taxpayers, and what we're doing to try and make sure that we're not using those predatory businesses.
I wonder if that requires a certain amount of detail you'd like to bring back later?
Yes, I can certainly do that, but I know that Councillor Cartman knows of old that this is a huge concern of mine. I mean, obviously the financial side of things, but the fact that companies make profits off vulnerable children is extremely distasteful to us, and we're doing a tremendous amount of work. I know Claire is over there, to ensure that we don't have to use those expensive out-of-area placements as far as possible. But, at the end of the day, investment in children's services is really needed where it starts, you know, in terms of early intervention and early identification and working with families, so we don't get to that point. And we are seeing, as Councillor Bell has referred to, we are seeing in this area the results of years and years of underfunding and cutbacks. And it puts us in this very difficult position. But yeah, I'll get you some detail about what we are actually doing.
Thank you. Do you want to sum up, Mike, say anything else?
Yeah, I'll just quickly on those few points. So statutory services, absolutely, we can have a bit of a stab at giving you a summary. I mean, I know of old that it's an impossible task because there's a huge list of services, and unfortunately it's not always as simple as dividing them statutory and discretionary anyway, because even where things are statutory, there's grey areas in terms of what that means, but we can certainly provide some examples to give a flavour. The other thing I would say is that often the discretionary services are the ones that are most valued by the public, so actually it doesn't even give you that easy list of things that you're going to necessarily be able to cut or remove, but we'll certainly do what we can. Community engagement, yes, I agree. We've got to keep ramping it up. That's what we've been trying to do over the last few months, and I would just encourage everybody to keep supporting us in that. And we've got to change the conversation, colleagues. We can't just keep coming to meetings and lobbying officers and saying, can you do this project immediately? Can you fix my pothole first? Because, you know, we are all in this together, to use that terrible phrase, and I'm afraid that means we've all got to be engaged in communicating. Good point about other parties, and I'll speak to Catherine in particular about how we can engage with some of the Labour front benchers.
Lobbying is already happening, I can assure you.
I'm not going to spread the net too widely, and we'll definitely come back to you on children's placements. I think there are areas as well that are highlighted in this report and in the budget next year and the year after that, because guys, this isn't going to go away. Even with a change in government, realistically, we are years away from a significant sea change in terms of what happens. So this is going to very much be the story over the next few years. And that is why councils are having to issue effectively bankruptcy notices, are having to go with inflation busting, council tax rises and so on. But that's what we're here for, and we just have to roll up our sleeves and get on with it.
Thank you. And if I can just make the official statement about bringing item 22 forward. I brought it forward because due to the management interventions which the council is asked to support, and it needs to be implemented with immediate effect. So there's an official phrase there that I should have said to start with. Thank you. So, Chief Executive's announcement.
I just wanted to formally welcome our new Director of Children's Services, Claire Shields, and we haven't rehearsed this, so Claire, would you mind just standing up and giving a wave so people know what you look like? And then they can say hi when they get a chance. That's great. Thank you.
2 waves tonight. That's good. Forward plan. Noting the forward. Do you move it or?
I'll move it. We note it. Yeah.
Noted. Councillor Bridger has withdrawn his oral report for the scrutiny panel and deferred it to the next meeting or whenever. No reports and matters from the executive, no reports and matters from policy overview and scrutiny panels or from other committees, none for item 20. So item 21, see if there's any oral reports from some of these external organisations. Avon Fire Authority, do we have an oral report? Robert? No. Avon and Somerset Police and Crime Panel? Councillor Crew?
Just briefly, Madam Chairman, because our meeting was just before Christmas.
Okay.
So I couldn't produce a report, or Stuart. But we've got the main meeting coming up shortly, so there will be a written report next time. Just to say that it was going through the budget process. I'm on a working group looking at the police budget very closely. Although they've said this year they will only be looking for the £10 increase, not another 15. And the plan is over the next 2 or 3 years to gradually reduce that to £2.50 in about 4 years' time. The biggest problem is the recruitment of police officers. The government's funded an additional 40 officers, but they're having trouble recruiting and training. But the one thing that is good to say is of the new teams that were set up, neighbourhood teams, the one in Weston is the first one that's fully manned. So that's helping the rest. The second one, which is the north of the district, is I think 2/3 manned, which actually we're better off than many of the other districts around us in Avon and Somerset.
Excellent news, thank you. West of England Joint Scrutiny Committee, is there an oral?
There are none, it hasn't met.
Hasn't met. Okie dokie. Thank you, councillors. Thank you for putting up with my bossing around, and safe journey home.